What's going on, Bears fans? I can't tell you how excited I am to be here with you this week, just able to talk about football. It was a long week, given that the game was all the way back to Thursday, but a happy one nevertheless, as the Bears were able to pound out a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a game that, honestly, I didn't expect them to win. And we talked about that last stream, that this was a huge game with a lot of potential variance with it being Thursday night, and I think you'll all agree that at least that part of the analysis came through, because both on the Buccaneers and the Bears end, it was a sloppy contest. But that doesn't make it bad, because the Bears were able to pull out a close 19-20 win that showed a lot of the backbone of the team and added to Matt Nagy's feathered legacy of winning one-score games, in which I now think he's 11-5, though somebody could fact check me on that. And of course, yes, that includes the entire 2020 season thus far. But so anyways, I have to shout out how happy I am. Somebody mentioned that this is their favorite part of the football week. I can't tell you how excited that makes me to hear. I love doing this kind of stuff for y'all, but let's get into the football. So one thing that I'm still working with is how to build this stream such that I can cut out the first little bit and create kind of a stream highlight for those who used to watch the videos that would take me all day and all night of basically an entire week. So I figured we'll start with an overview section where I'll give you the overarching gist of what I have in mind or to say about this game, and then we'll go from there when it comes to breaking it down. The first and most important So it's funny you say that, Zach, because the first and most important thing that I think I could point out is that this Bears offense was relatively successful. I mean, when you look at everything that has typified this Bears offense and all the failure that it has involved, Thursday's performance and showing was one of the most positive things you could see. They were doing this basically all game, and you saw it. A whole bunch of short throws that involved very easy reads. In this case, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in cover 3. Foles is going to read it. He sees that Mooney and his man have tons of cushion right there, and when he lets this ball go, it's free and easy on an out route, 10 yards. And they were basically able to do that, and none of their drives stalled because the defense beat them. More often than not, it's because the Bears beat themselves. I don't have to hammer the details into y'all because you've seen it, but for instance, we could go through this drive and you'll see yards, clipping along, getting first downs. And then all of a sudden, of course, how does the drive end? It ends not because nothing was open and not because the Tampa Bay defense made a play. It ends because Nick Foles right here. So let's go over this real fast. Tampa Bay basically spent the whole game, I'll just tell you this right now, in cover 3 and cover 1. They love this front. So take a look at this and I'll teach you some defensive stuff. If you count the guys right here on the line, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was the entire game, basically, because it's their favorite package. They'll line all 5 guys up on the line of scrimmage right here. And remember, that's or a 4-3, and they're all defensive. Very common to put 4 on the front line. They like to line up a 5th guy so that keeps the offensive line guessing. When you think Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm sure you think the same thing I do. You think Shaq Barrett, you think Levante David, you think Ndamukong Suh, you think Vita Vea, you think about the guys in their front 7, and they wanted to make everything scary. They like that kind of defense, so they line up 5. What this does is it means that they play a 5-2-5, or a 5-2-4, sorry. Can't count, obviously. But so they play 5 down linemen, basically. They play 2 linebackers, and they play 4 defensive backs. This pushes them into cover 1 a lot, and wow. That meant that they basically ended up having to play cover 1 and cover 3 a lot, and Matt Nagy might as well have solved Todd Bowles, though I'm going to be going into that a little bit more tomorrow and, of course, this evening. So that meant that this drive didn't stall because it was getting yards. Right here, I mean, for crying out loud, can you ask for a more open receiver than that. They run a sweet picking action that sees Darnell Mooney cut up and inside. He gets both guys tied up in the pick exactly like you want him to. And Nick Foles, I mean, he said afterwards that he couldn't believe how it came out of his hand. And I believe him, because this is a nasty miss. And it's one that you gotta hope is gonna get cleaned up, because it was right there for the taking. And this is like a classic and standard quarterback issue, but it's fixable, because we saw Foles complete more balls like this later in the game. And you gotta think that to some degree he's warming up still, to some degree practice. Look, I could make a whole bunch of excuses, but the point is that he made up for it later with his play. The other point that I, again, need to just hammer home is that the Tampa Bay defense didn't stop this play. The Bears offense did. And that was the story of the entire first half, where the drive ends there due to an offensive mistake. And as I'm sure you know, the drive ends on this next one due to an offensive mistake. It can't continue to happen, Davon, not at all. But there's going to be a silver lining at the end of this. So we'll analyze some Bears offensive mistakes, because the point is how positive it is. All right, take a look here. Once again, Tampa Bay is lining an overwhelming amount of guys up on the line of scrimmage, another 5 with 2 linebackers sitting here. This creates a cover 1 scenario in which Nick Foles likes his matchup with Allen Robinson. And, you know, in seasons past, I'd say, who doesn't? I love Allen Robinson when he's in one-on-one matchups, but this year, I gotta be honest with you guys, this has been happening an awful lot, and I hope it ends, because when I look at this throw in particular, the throw's fine. When Nick Foles puts this ball in a place where Allen Robinson is able to turn and get his hands on it. That's the whole goal of the jump ball, of the back shoulder ball, of whatever you want to call it. In fact, I actually think he kind of over rotates or steps a little too far forward, but I'm not a football coach. Everybody does this differently. I've seen it a million ways. The point is that Allen Robinson kind of tips it to his cornerback, and that shouldn't happen. You've got to hope that when your number 1 wide receiver gets his hands on the ball, he's either going to catch it or he's going to send the ball out of bounds, that this is going to be incomplete. Because remember, this is first down. And look, I'm never going to look at an interception and be like, the quarterback is totally blameless. Look, sure, maybe it could have been thrown better, but I'm only bringing that up because I imagine that somebody else is going to. If you ask me, this is something that I would put on Allen Robinson. The point is, again, if you want to be positive, Foles is making the right read and he's delivering the ball into a catchable place. You can build on that. And we'll skip it just for the sake of time. But remember, this drive also involved a deep pass right here that was completed. We'll go through these eventually. And another solid 13-yard gainer. The Bears were moving the ball, and you will hear that a lot. Fast forward to the third drive, where they start with an 8-yard pass, 2-yard run, first down. Then we'll move on to the second half. Incomplete, this is where the third major mistake comes. And you guys know what it is. This one, look, we'll watch the play, and we'll go through the coverage. So the Bears go with a heavy set right here that has 2 tight ends on this side of the line, another tight end in the backfield, so it's 13 personnel and 1 wide receiver with the defense in cover 1. Okay, so as you probably know, the Bears are going to run a play-action fake here. So they go play-action, the Tampa Bay defense plays along, drops into cover 2, but it's a one-on-one cover 2, so it might as well not really be cover 2 because Mooney here isn't doubled. So he's going to make a move, bang, against one of Tampa Bay's worst corner who's way, way out of position. Like, let me just go back and show you this. This positioning that he's taking against a vertical route is nasty, because what he basically does, because he goes into a back pedal and doesn't just turn his hips and start running, because that's not really running, he's moving just a little bit. It's very reminiscent of what happened in Philadelphia with the Gary kid, Nate Gary, I think his name is, 47, because he gets toasted, and he would have gotten toasted by anything. Like, this is great. This is a great route, and you will take it every time. And from this angle, and I'll talk about this in a second, doesn't it kind of look like Foles just leaves the ball way, way, way short? Like, what in the world's it doing over there? Well, I'll tell you. So from the back angle, what you're going to see is, okay, look, some people have brought up pressure. I want to be clear. Foles makes this throw without enough pressure to matter. This isn't a pressure problem. What happens is that when Foles lets this ball go, he throws to literally a different spot on the field. If you go back to where Mooney's route is, he starts it right around here, cuts inside, and then cuts up the field. The trouble is that I've seen a lot of corner routes, and I don't know how this is taught in the Bears playbook. I'm just telling you guys what I understand. A lot of teams will run that same in and out route a little deeper to the field, and Foles throws it over here such that Mooney could cut outside, catch the ball, wrap up the sidelines, and get in the end zone. Mooney runs it at such an angle, it's a little shallower, to where if Foles had draped it over to him, of course, bang, you hit him, you get in the end zone. And either way, what I'm trying to point out here is the protection is fine. The throw is... So the protection isn't fabulous. Somebody's pointed out, Leno, you're correct. But also, this is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're going to get guys home. And as much as that sucks to say, when you've got an average offensive line, you just take what you can get sometimes. But when Mooney makes this cut, you'll see that he makes it, and his foot had been planted in such a way, you almost thought he was going to come out a little wider. I don't know how this play is taught, but Foles clearly throws to a different place in the field. I'm never going to tell you this is not Nick Foles' fault. At some point when you've got a receiver open, and we've been seeing this in Chicago for years with Trubisky and now Foles, when you've got a wide receiver open, you have got to make the play because the Bears offense needs all the points it can get. But you can rationalize that this is, to some degree, a chemistry issue, that it's fixable because that throw is still accurate if he breaks at a different angle. He just didn't break at that different angle. And given that Foles had 3 weeks of rep splitting in training camp and now a week and a half of practice, and he should drill Foles because either way, the quarterback owns the touchdowns. He gets to keep the touchdown stats. He's got to own the poor plays. That's the thing though, Davon. In Foles' mind, he is putting it in front of Mooney. The break that Mooney comes out at doesn't seem to be, based on what I can tell, and I'm just guessing here, guys, but the way that Mooney runs this route, where he keeps it just a little inside and then comes outside, a lot of guys run this corner route a little deeper, like a 7, as it's called. And Foles throws it to where it's going to be that more angular route. Mooney runs it for a touchdown, and both are correct. You've got to see this get rectified, and there's a reason Nagy got so mad, because that drive right there, it burns a touchdown. I'm not going to blame Mooney. Honestly, it's not Mooney's fault. I think it's a chemistry issue, and I think it's fixable, but if somebody's going to have to own it, it's going to be Nick Foles, because then on third down, Tampa finally makes a play against the Bears. They drop into this quarters coverage that you see right here, and they just snuff it out, because the safety shows up where he's not supposed to. Generally, you don't plan on this safety, offensively speaking, to cut down underneath, but the Buccaneers had figured out that, of course, Allen Robinson is a Chicago Bears favorite, and defenses are going to make plays here and there. So there you go. Point is, here the Bears sit 0 points. And I'm sure you guys felt the way I did. You were mad. I was mad. I wasn't like fire Nick Foles, because I think he's our quarterback for better or for worse for pretty much the rest of the season. I don't think they're going to make a quarterback change, but this is bad. We'd missed a bunch of plays. We were shooting ourselves in the foot against the number 2 defense in the country, but nevertheless, we had no points to show for it. And then all of a sudden, the following happened. The Bears went to a short passing game that was kind of similar to what they'd been doing, where they rack up 7 yards, 9 yards. That's a first down. They lose 6, they pick up 4, they get an offsides, and they pick up another first down, 12 yards. And they drive all the way down the field against these coverages that are frankly very well manipulated by Matt Nagy. So here, Tampa Bay has gotten sick because the Bears have been driving for roughly 60 yards. And so they're trying to make sure that they cover what the Bears are doing. And so they line up right here. What Tampa Bay likes to do is either way, they're going to put their corner right here. So they've got one corner on each side of the field minimum, and they're in this cover one look. the Bears realize that there's a decent chance that they're going to drop to cover 3, because even with this deep safety right here, there's still a nickel corner on that side of the field and another corner right here, suggesting, you know what, they may be dropping deep. So because he's got that idea, the Bears send Demetrius Harris out here in this direction and squeeze Cordarrelle Patterson out into space against that corner who's sitting up in press. So then Foles lofts it over him, and the Bears take advantage of a cover 1 that might have been cover 3 with this clearing route by Harris again, who's going to draw the attention of that safety and leave Patterson way, way open, which is awesome. The play calling on this drive, frankly, as it kind of was all game, was really, really good and put the Bears deeply into position, which is awesome. They keep driving, and they end up with their first rushing touchdown of the game. Great. Finally, 7 points. So from there, they then get the ball back, which is rad. And yes, Bears is number 5, Bucks is number 2 for whoever's talking about defensive DVOA. Though that may change, because who knows? The Bucks gave up a solid 20 points. They could have been worse against the Bears. But so anyways, Bears get the ball back after that awesome fumble. We can go over that in a second. And then they immediately get not 1, but 2 shots at a touchdown. Because I don't know if you remember this, guys. I was in certainly a haze myself when I first watched it. But Nick Foles and the Bears actually threw 2 touchdowns on this, which is rad and seriously supreme. It's a dang shame Cohen's hurt. So the Bears so flustered the Buccaneers that it pulled them out of that 5-man front they like to sit in, and they started putting 4 down, and they would run into what's called a quarter. It's not quarters. It's called cover 4, which means that ideally they're going to drop 4 safeties, 1 into that zone, 1 into that zone, 1 into that zone, and 1 into that zone. Envision 4 players, bop, 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 bop. You get the idea. And the Bears figured that out. So what they're going to do, and I think this is super smart, Nagy literally is relying on the understanding that the Buccaneers know Allen Robinson is the Bears' favorite target. Because as you'll see on this play, let's just run it out and you'll notice, Robinson runs into the middle of the field and curls. And when he does, this safety has his eyes on Robinson. This safety comes down and has his eyes right here, and Jimmy Graham, maybe you can see it, is running wide open in a one-on-one against quarters, which isn't supposed to happen. Foles puts the ball up, and boom, should be a touchdown, right? But Jimmy Graham drops it. Doggone it. And that's another execution mistake that you could pin on the Bears. But thankfully, even with the loss down, the Bears are able to convert. But thankfully, even with the loss down, the Bears are able to convert on 3rd down due to the Bears are able to convert on 3rd down due to this really nice play once again against quarters, where you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4 as they drop into those zones we talked about earlier. And then I believe Jimmy Graham is going to clear out space for Cordarrelle Patterson in a one-on-one to occupy. So that's Kmet, as a matter of fact. So kudos to you, Cole. But Cole draws this safety right here and leaves Cordarrelle Patterson, who's really just trying to a little closer. He's just trying to get to their one-on-one against this safety, which is awesome. So then, bang, he gets it, makes a nice move, and the Bears convert. So far, so good, and almost nothing that the Bears have actually converted on has been all that difficult. Along comes probably one of the best individual plays of the game, which is a little weird to say when it comes to just athleticism. The Bears, once again, this is the play I was thinking about with Robinson. You saw him draw coverage on the other one. This one, he really draws attention as he runs across right there, and he gets both of these safeties looking at him with Graham once again in a one-on-one, and float, bang, one-handed catch. Really, really nice ball. The ball is placed into a zone. It's kind of like throwing to a spot where basically Foles just puts it over Graham's head, and then Graham makes a nice play on it in the air. Really, really solid stuff. Boom. Catch, touchdown. So what did we learn? Because this is something I want to make absolutely clear. There were 5 drives that I've just gone through, and the Bears ended all 5 of them effectively. They missed that 3rd and 2 that was very makeable. They missed the interception, which was kind of tipped by Robinson. They missed Mooney deep on that miscommunication, bad throw, whatever you want to call it. The point remains the same. And if you add up just those 3 drives, given that the Robinson incompletion, if you take a look at this, so the Bears are sitting at their 44. Let's get to it. Look at all this space Robinson has to catch and run. He's probably going to get to at least about right there. Maybe there at the least. But so that's going to put the Bears in prime position to keep driving and potentially get a field goal. So ride with me a little bit. Let's add a field goal to their total. So 3 extra points. Then if if the interception becomes an incompletion, they're already sitting, I'll just show you, they're already sitting at the Tampa Bay 36. If they gain almost any extra yards, they're going to get another field goal. So that's 6 points added. Then if you make the completion to Darnell Mooney, he walks into the end zone. Boom, you're talking about 13 points added, and the Bears could have easily walked out of this first half with 27 points against the number 2 DVOA defense in the world. Or not in the world, in the NFL. That got really dramatic all of a sudden. But so the point here is that Nagy's play calling was set up perfectly to combat what Todd Bowles was trying to put out there on defense, and he helped this offense, along with Nick Foles, into a really potentially, a massive potential positive situation as he and the Bears put only 14 points on the board, but ultimately enough. I'll go ahead and continue to summarize just so that when I do close out this video, or when I do clip this, it'll be a little bit digestible for those others. Nagy called a really good game, and Todd Bowles countered it with what's called a mint front, which really befuddled the Bears. It is a little more complicated, so basically what mint is, and they also varied cover 4 with it, but we'll get there, is that they've got 3 down defensive linemen, 1 jack linebacker, 2 other linebackers, a nickel corner that's on the opposite side of that jack linebacker, and it kind of has its own coverage rules. And the main reason that I talk about this is because what they started to do with this mint front was that they'd play man on the outside and drop this guy into that cover 4 zone, which really befuddled the Bears. And as you'll see on this play, they just weren't ready for it because based on the Tampa Bay film that I've watched, and I really tried to get into as much as I couldn't find another moment that they ran this. They saw that, or in this case, Foles sees that it's cover 4, but one of the common rules is that normally if they're going to drop into cover 4, let's say, this guy, it would drop back here, but let's say it's this one. He'd go there, he'd go into a zone, he'd go into this zone, and he'd go into this zone. But in this case, because it's this mint front, and it's a little weird, he's got Montgomery in man, just like how he's got his wide receiver in man, and even though he's dropping into cover 4, he happens to catch Miller on an out route while this linebacker drops into zone. You'll see why that matters. Basically, this defensive play call stymied everything the Bears wanted to do. Press man covers Mooney. Zone match covers Graham. I think that's Graham. It's either him or Kmet. Allen Robinson's not open because of the underneath route, but even as Foles is throwing the ball, this linebacker's already attacking Montgomery as they've dropped into cover 4. This look, just to cut to the chase, really flummoxed the Bears, and they didn't have an answer for it. They tried to find one, but I don't think Tampa Bay had shown it on film up to this point. And if they had shown it, they hadn't shown it in a strong manner. So Davon, you mentioned that Robinson's open. The trouble is that if this is normal cover 4, he's not going to be open because this linebacker should drop to this zone. So he's got to make a quick decision to get Montgomery the ball ASAP, and he shoots it to Montgomery, who's already being played by a man defender, and that's one of those that not every play is going to work. This is why they have those tablets on the side, so that the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the running backs and everybody involved in play calling and play executing ultimately is going to come together and figure out what they can do to beat this defense because they broke a common rule of cover 4. Looked like cover 4, was cover 4, but they did something different underneath. I hope that made sense. But so the Bears then stymied on this drive. Cole Kmet takes an offensive holding penalty against basically the same front as they don't have. So they play what is the same front with this nickel corner over here on the passing strength, as it's called. and this corner once again in press man, and the Bears try to run on it because what you're supposed to do against this mint front, it's really popular in college, by the way, is that you're supposed to get this ball outside and try to make a play on the exterior of the defense. Cole Kmet takes a hold right there, against number 23. I'll highlight it right here. Here's Kmet. You know what it looks like. And the Bears end up backed up to a 2nd and 20 that they still get fooled by. We'll just finish out this series more or less, because once you see what happens on 2nd and 20, you already know it's over. So at this point, once again in mint, once again trying to make plays against the Bears, they're lined up in an off coverage, but it's not. Because they've figured out, just like you probably did, that the Bears are trying to take advantage of every single off-coverage set that they can find. So Foles, for instance, sees that he's got this kind of distance between his man. You better believe he's going to have Mooney run a quick curl, and they're going to try to make a play after the catch. That's what they've been doing all game. And they're trying to avoid, by the way, in case you wondered why they're doing quick passing, they're trying to avoid having to deal with this line because the offensive line is really, it's going to struggle against a great defensive line, one of the best in football, and why test them? But their corners were wise to it. They started really playing those short throws, which isn't a problem. In this case, Zach, this isn't a screen. This isn't a screen, it's just a short throw where they're trying to make a play after the catch, but obviously Foles sees the oncoming corner and just places the ball low to try to keep it down. So they get double moves later, Oren. That's a great idea, and Matt Nagy has it. But at the moment, they basically take it back to the drawing board on 3rd and 20 because Todd Bowles is a good defensive coordinator, and they're just trying to get some yardage before they punt the ball away. Then on the next series, James Daniels gets hurt, and the Bears pay the price for it because Vita Vea is very, very good, and Alex Bars gets let know right here as he's going to just rush straight through and hit Foles on what could have been a nice play. And I just want to show you this so that we can complete the story of this game because Alex Bars had a rough first series of football, and then he started to clean it up. But then the Bears started to figure out how to beat this. They start, once again, getting a little bit of the underneath stuff working as they start countering what the Bears were doing, or not the Bears, they start countering what the Bucs were doing and finding holes in this front. So once again, right now, they've dropped one of the safeties. You can see that there's just one back and the corner's over here on this side. And exactly, Oren, one step is often all you need. So in this case, they break their rules again, and you're actually going to see Foles hit a second read here as Allen Robinson's going to get covered by this zone defender. So this one right here, let me highlight him for you. Number 54, Levante David. And Foles is going to take a look at Robinson, realize he's not there, and just turn back and find Jimmy Graham for a solid 8 yards. From there, the Bears get clipping. They start moving the ball again against this front in particular. This play is one that I really, really like because the Bears have realized that they can run a quick post. It's called a bang post, and they're going to slip Mooney out here to try to rub this corner the other direction. And as you'll see, it works perfectly and opens up a very, very tight window for the Bears to squeeze a ball in. Boom, completion. And there's a whole lot of this, and they keep going back and forth and back and forth, like you said, I don't know how to pronounce that, BKOYO, but one of these days I'll take a look at it. I'm looking a little too quickly right here. But so they go punch, counter punch, and Nagy starts matching plays to what Bowles is trying to do again. And then along comes right here one of the plays that again could have been made and could have been a touchdown as the Bears give up a sack right here, and I'm sure you saw it live. We all saw this, right? Where Cordero Patterson is going to slip out of the backfield and end up wide open, except Bobby Massey doesn't get the block down, and Foles ends up getting hit before he could get rid of the ball. Right here, so the guy that you need to be watching is Jason Pierre-Paul, who's basically not going to stop as he gets around to the edge, pops, and then sacks Foles. What you may have missed is that had Foles not been popped off his spot, right here, Cordero Patterson victimizes a linebacker whose feet are flat, and boom, right there, he has the entire corner of the end zone. But now granted, Foles is sacked. Right now he's getting hit. But the problem is that this throw had to be out right now at minimum. Like, this is the latest you could throw it, or else Patterson's not open because there's just not a lot of room in the end zone. But either way, Nagy was able to generate the space. Bobby Massey jumps on it, and right here you can see, I mean, he just gets destroyed because our pass blocking against this defensive line, which is, again, really, really good, struggled. And you would expect them to. They're the Bears' offensive line. They're just not that fabulous. That's okay to say against one of the best defensive lines in football, who's fourth in sacks, great on pressure for a reason. And then along came, not the last drive, but so the second to last drive right here, I don't want to go over because the Bears basically just don't execute. They're still piddling with the mint front. They're not 100% ready yet, and it's a bad drive. I mean, the play calls don't work. Play calls are a lot like quarterbacks throwing. You should expect on a good night like a 70% win percentage where your play call is better than theirs, especially against a really good defense. The Bears even catch a break on this penalty that I'm sure you guys remember. Not a great penalty call, but they keep moving along, and they get to this point right here because one of the lesser talked about things that we can go over. Suddenly Arians gets really aggressive right here, and he calls 2 incomplete passes. You know, there's one that I want to go over this because this is awesome. Chuck Pagano's not getting enough credit for how good a job he does. He runs a beautiful bluff front. We'll go over this more later in a deeper Q&A section, but as I'm sure you guys remember, Brady all night long was targeting this specific box of the field, the middle. He didn't want to throw outside. He's had issues throwing outside this year, namely pick sixes, and so he wants to target the middle of the field. Here the Bears are on 2nd and 20. They've got what looks like a cover 2, maybe cover 3 front with Kyle Fuller if he drops back, but knowing Kyle Fuller, he's probably guarding the guy on the end, so the Bears are bluffing a cover 2 shell, right? So from there, the Bears do this thing where right at the snap, they sneak Eddie Jackson up right here into the middle of the field. They fade Khalil Mack back also into the middle of the field, and take a look at this. They catch the Buccaneers red-handed. The Buccaneers have run a play-action set where they're going to try to push these 2 guys into the middle of the field, and Eddie Jackson standing directly in front of the first one, Khalil Mack standing in front of the second one, with guys in a bracket coverage, and Roquan Smith sitting in the middle. There's absolutely nowhere for Brady to go with this, and it creates a huge incompletion that effectively amounts to a free timeout, and it's all because of a really slick coverage roll that I want to show to you one more time, where right before the snap, and Eddie Jackson times this up really, really well. He creeps forward, jumps in, and look at that, they're in a different coverage. Kyle Fuller is in his usual off spot, maybe a little bit further back. Tashawn Gibson is really nicely placed in a deeper cover 2, just in case, and the Bears have snuffed out what was an attempt at getting a free shot over the middle and trying to create a first down. They blast this play, and it's due to a really good defensive play call. So then, the Bears get the ball back, and all they've got to do is find a way to move the ball against this mint front and get the ball into, or like through the field goal hoops, or into the end zone. Either way works. And so from there, they start out with what kind of became unexpected by the end of the game, like running it. The Bears did not run much, and when they did, it wasn't good. Because as you can see, right here, you're about to see Jimmy Graham doesn't really block his man well, if at all. The guy's going to try to come inside. Guys, I've watched this play like a few times. I don't actually know where it's supposed to go. I think it's supposed to be an outside run because you're going to see, I think it's bars come around. It's either bars or it's Whitehair. It's one of the 60s. I used to be able to recognize Daniel from Whitehair pretty easily, but with bars and Whitehair, they're 64, 65. I'm going to have to get used to that. But so the Bears run what I think is an outside zone or outside run, and Jimmy Graham is going to clip his man, but he's not got a whole lot of leverage. Yeah, it's bars. Bars doesn't clean his man out well. Massey's seems to be setting up for an inside hole, and Montgomery tries to take it where I think the play is supposed to go. Nothing's there, and it's just bad, guys. Like, the Bears running game, it's not great. And it could use a lot of those details that they talked about. And then this is when the mint front comes back. So again, it's cover 4 with, in this case, they stacked everybody up on the line, but it's going to follow the same rules as mint. And the Bears have a decent idea of that, as they're going to just try to figure out a way to get Jimmy Graham into a contested catch. He doesn't make it, which is okay. Biscuit, you nailed what I'm going for. Whitehair and Daniels look very, very different. That's for darn sure. But so the Bears try to squeeze this play out as they get Jimmy Graham as open as he's going to get against a safety, and he doesn't make a contested catch, which, hey, it happens. And then here, 3rd and 9, I think the Bears may draw on offsides. Let me check, because I don't remember them being in. No, okay, it's just a good play call. Here it is, mint front, right? So we've talked about it. We don't really know what this guy's going to do, but we've got a pretty good idea of what he's going to do, right? Because we've talked about it. He's going to drop back into that cover 4 zone, right? So if he's going to drop back into that cover 4 zone, and we know that this guy's probably playing man match, then we should send Mooney on a vertical and cut Miller underneath. He'd be wide open, wouldn't he? That's exactly what the Bears do here. As they play off of the rules that Tampa Bay has set, he drops, Miller's wide open, and he runs forward for an easy first down. This isn't a tough throw that Foles has to make, but man, this is a great play call exactly when the Bears needed it to push the ball a little further down the field. So from there, let me make sure that I remember the play call because I'm going entirely off of memory. I think the Bears throw it here. They lose a yard. Yeah, so they try a screen. We've talked before. Screens, they don't execute very well. And here comes the play that I think has been broken down the most, so I will be spending very little time on it. But basically, the play that ends up winning the Bears the game is another great play off this mint front. So the Bears have, David Montgomery split out, and he's about to motion inside. And when he does, this linebacker right here is going to make a motion to his safety. He's basically, did you see it? Because he basically told him, I've got him, lay off. So the safety is going to drop back into a zone, and the linebacker, Shaquille Barrett, is going to cover David Montgomery. Let me wind you back one more time so you can make sure you see it. I'll even zoom it in. So here we've got him going, and right here, there's the signal, that backhand, and Foles saw it. So Foles, amidst a whole bunch of other calls, leans forward. He tells Allen Robinson, it's right here. That's it. Right there, he says, rub. So then Robinson comes out and he does a rub route just like that ties up Shaquille Barrett. And David Montgomery is left completely free with a beautiful teardrop throw, and bang. Bears are in field goal range. And it's a beautiful call against that mint defense because they know that Allen Robinson's in man coverage and can use his man to rub Shaquille Barrett as the linebacker is going to cover the running back. Again, guys, this ties way back into this play where they realize that the outside receiver is in man and the running back is also in man. That play comes from that first play that had befuddled them so much. This is a beautiful, beautiful audible and a great example of the play calling, you could call it excellence of either Matt Nagy or Nick Foles or the conglomeration of the two. Either way, a lot of happiness to go around as the Bears are able to do the unthinkable and move the ball when they need it to move. Because that's the thing that I really found refreshing here. There are a lot of situations where, granted, this is where it gets complicated because I always feel like the Bears offense has been frenetic and erratic under Trubisky for a long time. And I still feel weird watching the Bears offense. I mean, guys, the Bears offense for generations has been a strugglesome affair. But in this case, like, man, this is beautiful. And like you're saying, Biocchio, this is punch, counter punch by Bowles and Nagy as executed by Nick Foles and that Tampa Bay defense. And even though you're going to see Charles Leno completely botch his assignment, look, I'm a big guy, or some would call me a Leno guy. I would more tell you that he's average. But right here, I think Foles even tells him that this guy isn't rushing, and he still sets out in that direction and gives up that inside rush. But Foles doesn't care. Like, Foles is a really, really good thrower under pressure, all things told. Rise, I wouldn't call myself a Leno apologist. I'd more say that or average tackle play in the NFL is worse than you probably think it is. And I'm a big believer that you don't need to necessarily have that perfect left tackle. And if the Bears are going to get a better left tackle, they basically have to use a first rounder on it. That's a different conversation. Thank you for saying you're kidding. That got my heart started a little bit. But so the point that I want to get through on all this is that not only did the Bears offense come through when it needed to, but remember how we talked about how you could add 13 points to the Bears offensive halftime total? Well, you could also add 4 more here because that sack that the Bears took could have easily been a touchdown. Y'all, I'm just counting 4 plays. 3rd and 2 to Allen Robinson, the touchdown throw to Mooney, the Allen Robinson interception, and this blown Bobby Massey block. And if you clean those 4 plays up, the Bears may have scored 37 points against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday night. That's huge. And when you think about the disparity of what the Bears actually came away with, only 20 in a barn burner of a game, you start to understand why Matt Nagy is so unbelievably frustrated about the way this offense is operating, you know? And thank you so much, Adele. That's really kind of you. So when you think about what this Bears offense might be able to do if they tie their execution together, it gets to be a lot of fun to think about, because I want to take a look at the stats real fast so you understand what just happened. The Bears offense ran for less than 40 yards, and Nick Foles basically had to carry the entire offensive game. That's right, Bears fans. Nick Foles, who did almost nothing truly physically impressive the entire game. In fact, I could go back and find for you the play that I think the play that I think was probably his best one. We'll do that in just a second. The Bears rode Nick Foles, a quarterback in blue and orange, to a victory. And even though it was a grindy victory that the defense definitely had to contribute in, they put 20 points on the board. And frankly, that's better than we've had in a whole lot of years, and certainly last year's offense rarely scored 20 points. It was a sad affair. What I think is something worth getting excited about here is that Nick Foles had a whole lot of mistakes, and he still ultimately completed enough passes to make the play at the end and guide the Bears to victory. Nick Foles is a cardiac kid. He's not going to put any space between people unless he has the best season of his life in navy and orange, and if he does, that'll be great. But as somebody who's trying to remain objective, I got to tell you, I wouldn't put your house's mortgage down on the idea that Nick Foles is going to start blowing teams out by 2 scores or more. He tends to win pretty close, but in those tight games, Nick Foles is nails. And as you saw in this late teardrop, I mean, this is a perfect throw off a perfect audible that comes from learning the whole defensive scheme and how they adjusted at halftime. This is a really beautifully executed call that the Bears are able to basically ride straight into field goal range as Cairo Santos gets set to kick away. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we could talk about, but the number one thing that I want to point out is that play calling ceiling of 37-40 points had execution been better, and what the Bears actually got. That's like a 50% output. We're looking for closer to 75 to 80. And somebody mentioned this in the chat like a little earlier, back up more, where they talked about how Nagy's harped on the execution before. You're right. He has, but he's never been this angry. This was the angriest I've ever seen him, and forgive me for being hopeful. I'm hopeful the Bears can tie this thing together. They've got a quarterback who made waves in Bears like media and Bears fandom. I'm sure you guys all remember it. He made waves for challenging Nagy and telling him, hey, let me speed up the game. Nick Foles and Matt Nagy are going to develop a play calling relationship, and if they can do this against the number 2 defense in football, then sure, I've got faith against the Carolina Panthers. I've got faith against the New Orleans Saints, at least a little bit. Are we going to beat all these teams? Let's not go there yet. Our offense is still going to try to be average. Right now, we're 24th, so we've got a ladder to climb. But I do think that if Matt Nagy is as good a play caller as he showed tonight, because he was really good against Tampa Bay, then maybe just average to slightly below average quarterbacking can end up That's the thing, True. You may not have been impressed with the Bucks D, but DVOA and a whole lot of statistics is. And Oren, I think Nagy being upset is good. It's better than him being positive and basically saying, that was fine, I'm glad. Because here's the thing. Tons of coaches in the NFL could have easily walked in and said, we beat a team we weren't supposed to beat. This is great. We won a game that we weren't favored to win. We're glad to come out with it. A lot of exciting, positive things. Once we clean things up, we'll be even better. He didn't do that, though. He came out of a big win against a team that should have beaten the Bears, quote unquote, and he was red hot. He was so mad. He was so upset at the offensive execution issues that plagued the Bears all evening long. And I could keep talking about all this, but I think you get the gist. The Bears offense was okay, maybe even bad, but they left a lot of points on the board and ultimately still did enough creative things and recognized the coverages that one of the better defensive coordinators in football were trying to We're trying to throw at the Bears, and they were able to counterpunch and win the football game. I think that there's real positivity here if you say Nick Foles has been with this offense for, at this point, during this game right here, guys, Nick Foles had been with the team for a good while, but the starting quarterback for a matter of about 10 days and having split reps in practice. So I get the impression that the Bears offense could actually improve. And we'll need to see that against Carolina, but at that point, we would be getting more into the Q&A. Ultimately, if you asked my thoughts on this game, I thought the defense was good. They weren't great. Somebody said it earlier. They were kind of spotty, and that's a great way to describe it. The Bears defense in this game in particular made good plays on about 66% of the plays, and then Tom Brady and the Buccaneers made a better play on the other 33% and were able to just keep moving the ball down the field amidst third downs, amidst this and that, making plays and exposing some Bears flaws that you would hope get cleaned up, like Roquan getting spun out of by Ronald Jones a couple of times. We can go through that in a little bit. But the defense was good, and they came up with a huge turnover when they needed it, and they definitely stymied the Bucs defense, or the Bucs offense there at the end of the game. And Khalil Mack came alive when he desperately needed to, shutting down some huge drives with his pass rushing ability, which was really phenomenal to see because I don't think it can be said enough that the Bears desperately needed those plays from Khalil Mack to get out of this game. But credit to the offense where the offense needs it. The offense came through and put points on the board. They started one drive at the 10-yard line, drove it all the way down, and should have scored a touchdown had Bobby Massey not blown that block. Instead, they just get 3 points. But they kept driving all game long. They got set up with one short field, and they cashed in on it. At the very end of the game, not only did they take the lead with that drive that started at the 10, but then they started at their 45, so not the shortest field in the world, or not the longest field in the world, but some distance, and then they mowed their way down into field goal range, and then made it even easier so that Cairo Santos didn't even have to kick less than or more than a 40-yarder, and he cashed in. This was a team win. That's what I'm driving at here. The coaches did a great job. Chuck Pagano called some really, really creative stuff. Matt Nagy was pretty much good all night long, sans a third quarter where Todd Bowles and the loss of James Daniels completely befuddled him. And then here in the fourth quarter, the Bears play calling came alive once again, and they were able to get the better of the Buccaneers, put the points on the board they needed to, trust their defense to make the play, and they came through. This is a huge win. The Bears move up to 4-1 against a really good team, and especially given that it was 4 days removed from a total whooping to the Colts defense, this was great stuff. It was exactly what you want to see if you're a Chicago Bears fan. It's really tough to walk away from this one not positive, in my personal opinion, because at the end of the day, the only reason that the Bears didn't win by more is because they beat themselves here and there, and they didn't need to. But yeah, so at that point, I want to open it up. What do y'all want to hear about? What other things do you want broken down? Because I am at your service. I'm ready to take questions. If you want me to just opine at this or while we talk and I just leave up this screenshot or play some plays in the background, we certainly can do that. But At this point, I'm all yours. I've got my note sheet up with me to try to find some plays. But yeah, so at this point, I'll just start talking while y'all get some questions in. So somebody asked why Miller's nowhere to be found. I think it's just because of personnel. What the Bears basically realized in this game is that they just needed to get two weapons out to one side of the field, and they could, generally speaking, jimmy the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into specific formations. So you're totally right that this was supposed to be Miller's breakout season, but the trouble is somebody else is breaking out, right? Darnell Mooney's been fabulous, but the Bears realized that all they had to do to get Tampa Bay to shift into the packages that they wanted, in this case, I think they're still going to try to drop into quarters, but the Bears realize that they've got a matchup, is just kick out multiple offensive weapons to one side. And as long as the Buccaneers, who have shifted out of it at this point, were in that 5-down formation, they were able to get the Buccaneers into cover 1, cover 3. And they already do here. Right now, it looks like it's a cover 1 look. I think this is the play where they just take, this is Harris, believe it or not, Demetrius Harris, way out here on the side. So he's got all that space. He makes a cut in. Boom. Nice quick play. This may even be, no, it's not an RPO, but there are a couple RPOs all throughout the game. A lot of them were pretty good. And if you guys don't mind, this is where I have to plug real fast. I have never had more than 150 people on stream. It looks like I have 600 at the moment. So if you are enjoying it, a like would be incredibly appreciated. You guys are the best. I can't believe this. I am so grateful for this turnout, and I just want to help however I can. If you like the show, please like it. If you don't, comment afterwards how I can improve. I am always down to improve. But so anyways, somebody talked about Trevathan. Would you believe it if I told you that Danny Trevathan had his best game? Danny Trevathan was all over the field on, wait for it, the running game. He was making plays left and right against the run. We'll start with a simple one. So this one right here, you're going to see him stay patient, hit a linebacker, and drop Ronald Jones for 4. And we will get to the defensive tape, Felipe. I'm not gonna lie. So I am a massive fan of offense. I'm trying to learn as much as I can this year. My goal as an analyst, in case you are curious, as to what I'm doing, I want to become a schooled football person that could coach if he wanted to. Not because I want to coach, but because I want to learn so that I can make sure I'm giving you guys the best information possible. And I'm still in the middle of learning defense, but at this point, yeah, I'm going to do my best. The point is that right here, the Bears have been struggling with the run, but Danny Trevathan might as well have turned into a Mike linebacker on this game, because he takes on a lineman right there and still shuffles over and makes the play. This is very, very, this is very reminiscent of Nick Kwiatkowski and how he was able to attack offensive linemen. It was really, really cool to see. Danny Trevathan still looks a little slow. I'm not about to pretend he doesn't, but what I will say is that the plays that he is making were really, really helpful, especially against the run. So let's find another. Ooh, this one's beautiful that I'm about to show y'all. So I think it's right here. Take a look at this as Danny Trevathan. So, Davon, he is the Mike, but you got to remember that Trevathan was always a will linebacker back in the day. So, what I want you guys to notice here is that Danny Trevathan on this play right here is about to roll over. He's going to smoke his blocker and free up Roquan Smith. So, you'll see it right here. This blocker, let's slow it down, but this one right here is going to come out to hit Trevathan. Trevathan steps in and does something Roquan can't do, engages him, forces Ronald Jones back up the middle, and Roquan's able to roll over and make the play. This is good stuff. And so Trevathan got a very solid payday, as you guys know. And it definitely was looking really rough there for the first couple games. I would talk about it. It was trouble. It wasn't what you wanted to see at all. But lately, man, This play right here that he's about to make, once again, first quarter, check this out. So you're going to see Danny Trevathan set up against a tight end, and oh boy, this is some old school Bears linebacking as he steps up, smokes him, and still is able to stay engaged with the play and limit this run to a first or to a 2-yard gain. This is awesome. Again, this is Trevathan. Steps up, smokes Gronk, and stuffs the runner for 2 yards. These gains are all, 4 yards, 4 yards, 2 yards. But if there's one thing to help, no, true, that's not fair. And let me quickly talk about Roquan Smith. People are saying, is Roquan a bust? Totally unfair. Roquan is a pass coverage linebacker, and that is it. I wish that I could say he was more than that, but he's not. He's a pass coverage linebacker that, if he's unblocked, will make plays against the run. That's the goal. He's the old school will linebacker. Don't let him get blocked by a tight end or an offensive lineman and you're good. This is one of the best plays of the day. It's made by Roquan Smith. Check this out. So it's going to look simple right here as Trevathan lets the guy go by him. He's sitting in zone, gets caught flat-footed, but I want to point out what's about to happen. So Roquan Smith has a coverage assignment against Mike Evans. He has to carry the wide receiver up, and then he's just in zone space. And right here, Brady is going to keep his eyes to the middle of the field because he's trying to hold the safeties as his tight end fans on a block and cuts into the middle of the field. That's his goal. Roquan is way over here, but he already recognizes the danger. So he's going to get back to the middle of the field, and by the time the ball gets there, oh man, did y'all see that? Like he steams over, he puts his shoulder directly into the ball, and he dislodges this thing like a champ. Oh yeah, that is awesome, and it's made by Roquan Smith and a heads up play. We'll get to Bell. We will get to Le'Veon, I promise. The worry, if you're wondering why I'm talking about not only the game, because it is a game breakdown stream, but also not Bell, is because I keep seeing a lot of talk that Bell may sign with the Chiefs, and I'm trying not to get myself too excited. So we'll get there, and we'll talk about what he may mean, but like a lot of free agency frenzy, he may go somewhere else, and it may have nothing to do with what Ryan Pace does or doesn't do. Now, if there's one thing that was kind of problematic in this Bears game, it's that they let receivers open a lot way back in the in the backfield. This was a game where if I was going to criticize anybody, it would probably be the coverage. This was one of Jalen Johnson's worst games that I saw, and in this play in particular, so the Bears are going to drop into cover 4. Right here, like Johnson, we talked about it, four-man zone. And Eddie Jackson's going to get beat because he thinks he knows what his guy's going to do. And right here, I can't remember what this guy's name is. It might be like Hudson, shakes and bakes Eddie and ends up, oh man, that's pretty open. And Brady's let go of the ball. Now he's really open, but he misses him. Thank heavens. You like it when the other team doesn't show up to play. And on this Thursday night, 43-year-old Brady certainly didn't look quite like himself when he was throwing anywhere else. But yeah, Danny Trevathan ultimately had a pretty good game. It's not like he was incredible. It's not like he wasn't the best. And certainly there are some plays. Let me find one. So right here, like, this is also in the early parts of the drive, or in the early parts of the game. I believe Danny Trevathan gets burned here by Gronkowski. He does. Keep an eye on Trevathan. His pass coverage still isn't incredible. It's very similar to that of a Mike linebacker as he just rolls right on through. There's Gronk. Bang. Open. And sure, that's something that you'd like to clean up. But also remember that, especially in a defense like this, every time you give a play, you're looking to get a play back down the road. That's why they give you roughly 80 yards of space to roll all the way back down the field. You got to make more than just one play over the middle. And the Bears, and credit to Trevathan, they tried to target him as often as they could to keep on. And yes, I agree with you, Shaped. Thank heavens Brady didn't play very well. Because, I mean, you always love it when the other quarterback doesn't play well. But in particular, take a look at these. Both of these next two plays are Danny Trevathan. And again, it's not that he's amazing. It's that he did just enough. He got targeted effectively by the Buccaneers, and he stood up to the test. In case you're wondering, he's right there. Take a look at this play. Gronk runs an out route. Trevathan gets in front and makes a really nice play on the ball. Ends up knocking the darn thing away. And so here, I think this is like a second down. And so the Bears defense gets in his face. It's a nice little rush by Bilal Nichols, as a matter of fact, who's right there. He's going to pressure Brady just enough to get Brady to get the ball out. As Trevathan rolls over, boom, knocks it out of Gronk's hands. Really well done, which is awesome. Trevathan was ultimately good enough. Again, he was a weak link that the Buccaneers planned to target, and he just wasn't bad enough for the Buccaneers to get a lot of mileage out of coming after him. And that's all you can ask for sometimes. I think this is another one. Ooh, you guys are going to like this. So one of my favorite things to watch in football is a flowing linebacker. I also like a lot of offense, but Trevathan's going to come from way over here to make this play, and it's real nice. That's real fun. I love that. Again, Trevathan played good enough, especially against the run, where he was one of the biggest reasons that Ronald Jones wasn't able to run for a babillion yards. And at the end of the day, when I started to realize that he was out there not as a guard against the pass like he used to be, but a guard against the run, it started to make a lot more sense. Now, there's one play I have to go over, and it's this Ronald Jones run to the right, and I need to, and by the way, you're dead on, G-Money. I'm also from Texas, and man, watching the Cowboys does not teach you how to tackle. So anyways, I want to cover this because, look, I'm going to show you the play first, but this is a big, long run, and I have to cover this play because it's the best example that I found of what Pagano and the Bears are doing in the running game. So, I've talked about this before, but the Bears defense was founded on a principle that I like to call a cheat code defense, right? Where they want to run cover 2 shells in the back, and they want to have 4 guys right here, frankly, like 2, cover an entire NFL running game by themselves, roughly. So they want to have Hicks play 2 gaps, meaning this, and they want to have this nose tackle also play 2 gaps. We've all seen it, right? Like we've all seen that that's what they wanted to do with Hicks and Goldman. Again, Hicks covers these 2, Goldman would cover those 2. This guy gets the outside gap, and Max seals the edge, and everything's hunky-dory from there. Roquan would roll in, or Trevathan would roll in, depending on which side they actually attacked, and it was just really creative. That's the whole goal of the defense as it was founded by Fangio. So the problem is, as we've seen, Bilal Nichols and Roy Robertson Harris, they're not Eddie Goldman, and nor should they be. While I would love for Bilal Nichols to be Eddie Goldman, he'd have to be almost 30 seconds, or he'd have to be almost 30 pounds or heavier so that he could engage offensive tackles at that level. And guys, I gotta be honest, he's just not. So what Pagano has done has become really impressive, because if you watch the linebackers, you're going to see that they've started deliberately fitting the linebackers into rushing lanes. Instead of Hicks covering these 2, I think Hicks is just going to cover this one, and Max just going to cover this one. But Nichols is going to roll over, and he's going to cover this one, because Trevathan's going to cover there, Roquan's going to cover there, and Quinn's going to cover there. That's the goal. So they're going to start using their linebackers to fly around and cover more space. As you can see, Quinn's got the edge, but he's not going there. Roquan Smith just blitzed up. Trevathan's going to run over, cover that lane. Nichols is rolling over, trying to cover here. Hicks is already in that lane. They went from a 2-gapping style to a 1-gapping style, which makes Nichols a much better run defender. ... when he's not getting double-teamed. As you can see here, he gets double-teamed pretty good. Trevathan's in that gap trying to watch from him, and Ronald Jones is going to escape out the middle, beat Eddie Jackson in this zone, because as you see, Eddie is going to step up because he can see what's happening. Like, he's going to see that hole develop. He's going to attack and try to limit this run. He doesn't do it, because Ronald Jones is a really good running back who showed a lot of moves with the ball in his hand, and he ends up making the run. But the point is that Chuck Pagano is well aware that he's not going to turn Bilal Nichols into Eddie Goldman, and he's not going to turn Roy Robertson Harris or John Jenkins into Eddie Goldman, who's paid almost $10 million for a good reason, and instead he's going to just make sure that he gets a defender in every gap, and most of the time that limited the Bucs' running attack. Now, what's complicated here, yeah, right? What's complicated here that I think is most interesting is that the Bears are proving out a concept that I think is really intriguing, right? What I've seen with the Colts and what I saw against the Bucs is that even though the Bucs were a pretty good running team, they didn't run it as much as they could have because at the end of the day, Bruce Arians and Frank Reich want to pass the dang ball, which I think is really intriguing. It's this concept of how bad does your run defense actually be to get a coach in 2020 to run the ball consistently, because neither Arians nor Reich really did. At the end of the day, they just kept throwing the ball. And I found that, the Bears-Colts game was awful. But the point is that the Bears' running defense has become good enough. They're 16th in the league last I saw. And all that's really meant is that they can do just enough to make plays and force the other team into more of their throwing rhythm, and I find that incredibly intriguing. One thing that I will point out, I thought this was a funny one. Nobody's asked for this. This was one of the most penalty-ridden plays that I think I've ever seen, by the way. So the Buccaneers, I'm going to just tell you the play. I think they call a screen one way or another, and Mac's going to run out here, and then he's going to get held. And then Nichols is going to get thrown to the ground, and Hicks is going to get held like crazy. And it's so funny as I saw it because it looked like a whole lot of penalties. And I was like, wow, that's a whole lot of penalties. And so, again, Nichols thrown to the ground. Roy Robertson Harris, I think he gets held on the edge. No, he doesn't. So Roy Robertson Harris is ignored. Again, I just think this one's funny. Hicks gets held on the backside, and so then Nichols gets ripped to the ground. Mac is held over there, host of defensive penalties. So, again, just funny. And yeah, it does happen on screen all over the place. Somebody talked about like what separates them from 2018, and you're totally right. In 2018, again, Hicks and Goldman by themselves just smoked everybody, totally alone. They dominated the game, and they would, what is the word? They would, I remember Hicks and Goldman basically beat the Vikings by themselves. And I find that so intriguing because now they can't do that. And they're trying to figure out how to create a defense that's geared to stop the pass without actually defending the run all that well. And so far, I actually think they're doing a decent job. I mean, take a look at this, right? Here the Buccaneers are. And all they've got to do, all they have to do is just run the ball 3 times. All they have to do is run the ball 3 times. And instead, what they do, because they've been getting roughly 4 yards a carry, instead they call a wham block on Brent Urban that just doesn't happen. This tight end doesn't get over there fast enough. Urban runs into the backfield and plants Ronald Jones for a loss of 2. They lose 2 yards, 1 time. And what do? They immediately go to the pass we talked about earlier. And this costs the Buccaneers 2 huge potential timeouts that they could have forced on the Bears. Instead, they give that pass away, and then they go right over here, and they give this pass away. Because at the end of the day, as much as I know Chicago loves to play or to get mad at Matt Nagy for abandoning the run, what I've seen is that everybody in the NFL collectively seems to abandon the run really, really quickly. And here the Buccaneers are at 3rd and 12. The Bears drop into a deep cover 4, cover 3 kind of thing, and they're able to force an incompletion because they've just got everybody blanketed. This was a weird game because basically for the first 3/8 of the game, so all the way through right about like there, the Bucs had dominated. They'd just gotten everything they wanted to. And exactly like you're talking about, John, when the Bears load up to stop the short runs, they're ultimately stopping quite a few of them. It's just these early down runs that get their goat. But at the end of the day, when I look at this team, what I find really intriguing and good about the defense is that they're able to make plays that not a lot of other defenses are making. The one that I love, that you better believe I'm going to go over this, I had a quick breakdown on it on Twitter, So the Buccaneers come out here, 3rd and 10. You better believe this is the Kyle Fuller fumble. And Fuller's going to make a play that he quote-unquote shouldn't. So I kind of mucked up the coverage when I was talking about it. The Buccaneers are going to run a form of drive right here. So again, that is a breaking route that's timed up with this breaking route that's timed up with a running back who sets back and runs a cross breaking route to create some confusion, while Evans and Miller over here run a completely different package. They run what's called smash. So that's going to be, he's going to kick out to here and run a slant. He turns it into an out, while Miller runs a 5-yard curl and tries to just keep Fuller out of the play. Makes sense, right? You're getting Mike Evans up against Buster Screen. Well, this is what's really interesting, because if you remember, going back to the Chargers game, Tom Brady has thrown a couple pick sixes so far this year. He's not super happy with it. So when he sees Buster Screen, I want to throw it or slow it down, look a whole lot like he's got him covered. Like all the way through this, Buster Screen seems like he's got it covered. And then Evans shoves him out of the way. We've seen that before from Evans, and he's open. But here's the thing. I don't think Brady wants to make this throw. Like, I've watched this a couple times. Brady doesn't want to make a throw this long because whether he's scared of Kyle Fuller dropping back or maybe Buster Screen had it covered, he's thrown 2 pick sixes already. He's 43 years old. He knows that it's the end of the half. You can't give up a free score right here. Oh my gosh. So I think Brady panics and he checks it down to a safe option. Here's the problem. Kyle Fuller, shark in the water, is ready for it. He knows, because I want to back it up. Kyle Fuller gets bored, basically. He's a smart corner. I love this. This is about to be awesome. So I need to slow it down so you can see it. But Kyle Fuller drops back with Scotty Miller, feels, because that's a thing, believe it or not, in defense. You can feel your man breaking. He feels him stop, and already he knows the route is over, and he is scanning the field. He's watching Brady, but he's about to get bored and find where Brady wants to go with it. He turns his head there, he spots his target, and he runs after him. Boom! He is there so early, and the running back can't do anything about it. This ends up becoming a quote-unquote safe decision that isn't good at all by Tom Brady, because by the time he catches it and turns, that is not what you want to see if you're a running back. As a ball carrier, you don't want to see a guy bearing down on you, pun intended, and he lights through the ball. The Bears were killing themselves over turnovers that they've been missing, and you can tell because, man, did Fuller go straight into the ball. And I don't know if anybody's talked about this, but you want to talk about defensive swagger? Keep your eyes on Kyle Fuller after the hit. He hits this guy and turns around and doesn't even look at him. He sees the ball, walks right past it, and just skips to the other side of the field. Is that not a little bit of swagger? This is just such a simple thing that doesn't really matter, but he sees he lights up the fumble and just skips away because he knows it was good. That's really cool. I love this. But yeah, so the Bears defense, exactly like you're talking about. This is amazing, guys. I've never seen this. This is incredible. Anyways, I'm gonna just try to keep my eye on the football. But so from there, it's super clean. It's amazing. And it brings up this idea that I want to keep just hammering home about this Bears defense. This Bears defense can make a play at any minute. Right after that 37-yard gain to Ronald Jones, what did he do? Like, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. Khalil Mack made a play. Because at the end of the day, this Bears defense wants to hit you whenever you hit it. It knows that it can't stop everything. And right here, this is the fun one. But so I think Robert Quinn gets a good bit of pressure too. He does. Well, he gets deep enough to at least panic Brady as hot dang, Khalil Mack cuts right through and then throws Wirfs like right on his butt. I mean, it's very clean. But the point is, this sack from Khalil Mack basically shuts down a Tampa Bay offensive drive as he cuts straight through Tristan Wirfs and then lets him know at the end. He lets him have a little bit. And you guys saw, I was able to package together a really fun Khalil Mack highlight reel tribute thing that honestly has been stewing for a while, and after this game, it just made a lot of sense. But, Adel, you shouldn't be too shocked about that because Brady doesn't want to take hits. The man's 43 years old, and Bears fans of all teams, I'm sure you guys remember exactly exactly how Brett Favre's career ended with Corey Wooten. He doesn't want to go out like that. He wants to keep playing, and you better believe that he played like he wanted to keep playing today, going down whenever things got too hairy. That's how he wants to know. And exactly like you're talking about, Kaiser, he chucks him around, and it's awesome. One thing I loved about this Bears team is that they played with a lot of fire in this game. Offense and defense, they were not there. They were not about to deal with the Bucs guff. And on a play like this, another sack that the Bears were able to get, they just take advantage of tackles that kind of just both blow the play. In fact, I can't even remember how Vaughters gets so open right here. He doesn't get blocked. That's the standard James Vaughters special, as a matter of fact. Every Vaughters sack that I've seen, going back to his preseason, he's just magically unblocked and makes a play, which I think is hilarious that this guy is making we hit 1,000 viewers. That is insane. Anyways, getting back to it, Vaughters has a wonderful habit of finding his own way to get unblocked. And you know what? At some point, you stop saying why or like this is weird, and you start saying I'm okay with this. And yeah. Exactly, Biscuit. I mean, this Bears defense was spicy all throughout, and it traversed to the offense because the Buccaneers started talking trash too. I mean, I don't mean to be some kind of human highlight reel, but I want to remind everybody exactly what was going on in this game. This game involved the Tampa Bay team that, let me go through the hate list, if you will. Bruce Arians had gotten rejected by the Bears on a job that he thought he had. Tom Brady lost to Nick Foles, and you better believe that the competitive son of a gun that he is, he thought about it and wanted to beat Foles on his new team. This Tampa Bay defense had gotten embarrassed by Matt Nagy only 2 years earlier. There's a reason, guys, that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lined up on their logo before the game, like on the Bears logo at midfield. They were so ready, and they wanted to win this game. They were trash talking the Bears the whole time, and the Bears just made plays. And right here, I'm going to see Tristan Wirfs. I saw he got a fumble, or he got a holding call right here. I want to see it. And yeah, maybe I got the wrong player. But anyways, there's a holding call here, and yeah. So at this point, first of all, somebody mentioned it, that the Bucs showed no fear. They went for it deep in their own territory, and then all of a sudden they kept getting down. But yeah, anyways, the Bears stood up to the challenge, and ultimately they answered. And while, yeah, you'd better believe that it helped that Vita Vea went down, because I'll show this one more time. Alex Bars got his lunch eaten every single time that Bars matched up against him. Vita Vea is a monster, and frankly, that's in and of itself its own thing. You got to remember that this Bears offensive line looked unbeatable against one of the worst defensive fronts in football, the Detroit Lions. The better defensive fronts in football, though, DeForest Buckner and Vita Vea and the Buccaneers and the Colts, they popped the Bears. So let's be honest, guys. The Bears' offensive line is probably somewhere in the middle. They're better than the Giants. They're better than the Lions. They're not as good as the Colts. They're not as good as the Buccaneers. We don't need to pull our hair out just because our offensive line is dead center average. I mean, it's okay to say this offensive line, it's just all right. And ultimately, I think that's where the Bears are. Their offensive line's just okay, and thankfully you can supplement that with a whole lot of quick passing. I'm not about to pretend that James Daniels' loss is not a big deal, because as we saw on plays like this one, it's a sack near the end of the game. It's basically the play that might as well have blown up this third and wrong drive. Thank you guys for hanging with me. This one right here, both of these, frankly, were some nasty plays. I mean, this is that second to last drive and Blazing Raptor, you're dead on. According to a fan, a lot of times, and I don't mean this in any negative way, offensive line's really hard, guys. An average offensive lineman looks bad because he gets sillied 2, 3, maybe 4 times a game. The elite offensive lines still get beat. like the elite offensive linemen like David Bakhtiari, unfortunately, they still give up sacks. It's possible. So an average offensive line, exactly like you're talking about, it's going to look bad. And in this case, for instance, this is one of those like, Leno's a chump kinds of plays because Shaquille Barrett, who's a really good tackle, pulls a speed move on him that just beats him immediately. I mean, I'm not about to try to pretend that this is an incredible play or something like that, but I am going to tell you that, like, Shaquille Barrett, really good player. And the Bears, they get the look they want here. They're going to run a play. I can't remember what Graham does. I'm pretty sure he occupies this safety. But they get Mooney one-on-one, and that's what you want, right? You want to be able to get this exact matchup. And once you get this kind of space, just chuck it like down here-ish, and you might be able to make a play. And of course, hindsight's 2020. You see he's open, though Foles is getting absolutely destroyed in the middle. But so Foles lets this go. Nice play, Darnell Mooney. You're a secret defensive back, and I'm okay with it as he flicks away an interception, which is great. But yeah, so Leno got beat on this one, without a doubt. And then the next play, so Leno didn't get beat, Quinn. Leno blew his assignment, which is even less common than Leno getting beat, because normally Leno at least is assignment sound. But in this play, for instance, we're about to see Germain Ifedi just, let me see. This is one where, yes, Germain Ifedi blows a stunt here, and this costs the Bears another down. And remember, I mean, the bright side about what Nick Foles did is I'm actually showing you guys a bunch of plays, and boss, you better believe it. Every single week at 9 p.m., I'm going through these games because I don't have the time, unfortunately, to put together those cool video breakdowns. We'll do those at the off-season. But these seem to be going pretty well, and I really enjoy doing them. So right here, you're going to see, I think it's a stunt, as the Bears offensive lineman, Bars and Whitehair, are going to pick up Golston, and this guy is going to, and Ifedi's going to carry this guy inside as he rolls around, and somebody misses their assignment because, oh boy, does he get through. And I need to take a look so that I can actually identify what happens. I think it is, let's slow it down. Okay, it's a stunt on the edge that carries him in there, and then he beats Massey to get through and force yet another incompletion. And this one actually might have been snuck in there. Once again, this is where the Buccaneers, they kept playing this mint front. As you can see, again, two linebackers, Jack linebacker right there, nickel corners in man this time as they want to play quarters, and they're going to try to sneak Allen Robinson inside underneath. Exactly, like you're saying, Davon, it's a good defensive play as they run a stunt up front, and Allen Robinson turns. Maybe there's a tiny window, but this safety's already breaking. I'm not about to try to tell you, it definitely would have been an interception, but oh boy, this one's not great, especially when the throw gets tipped and it's kind of hard to tell because, guys, Nick Foles isn't Jay Cutler. Like, he can't throw the ball a billion miles an hour, and that's all right. But either way, the Bears' offensive line, I mean, it does its best. I'm not about to pretend that it's the greatest offensive line in the world. It isn't. But it's also not the worst. And a lot of people are saying that it's, like, super duper bad, and it's all right. And against, so, boss, this is a Bears channel, and I want to break down some other players so that we can all learn about guys like Gardner Minshew and other interesting stories around the NFL. But we'll deal with those later. This is the Bears for now. And so on this play, for instance, the Bears are able to hold, and they're able to generate something off of play action. But so, yeah, exactly like you're talking about on so, like, Leno I think he's actually just average biscuit. I like Leno, and I think he's just dead average. Maybe a little above, like, last year, but he's generally dead average. But he's a technique-based player, so when he gets beat, oh boy, he looks really bad. And if you take a look at this play, this is actually a pretty good example of what I'm talking about. Nick Foles doesn't need forever. And he's surprisingly good throwing under pressure. As you guys can probably see, oh boy, this Bears offensive line is giving up some serious ground against this Buccaneers front. That's super duper good. But credit to Nick Foles, he's about to let this ball go into a pocket of space because he knows that Kmet is able to run into this space, draw this corner as Robinson breaks up. Check out when he releases this ball. This is not see it, throw it. This is throwing as he breaks. It is beautiful as he drops that ball into a pocket of space, and really solid job by Robinson. He sits down exactly where he should and collects the ball. The Bears' offensive line isn't a world beater. It's not, but it's good enough to make plays. And as you can see here, as the Bears drop back, they hold off for just long enough that even though Willie Golston lights up Nick Foles, they're able to get a completion. Now, if there's one thing I want to talk about, and I've talked about this in my Foles breakdown, which if you're new to my channel, maybe some of y'all are. If you're not, thank all 1,020 of you for showing up. This is incredible. But if you are new to the channel, go check out my Nick Foles breakdown. I think it's one of my best things I've ever done, and you'll see that the number one thing I am worried about, and thank you, Mimil, is that Nick Foles takes a lot of hits. He is a tall guy who's more than willing to make a play with his body, and in a play like this, bang, he's going to take a shot and go right down. And I hope that he's able to somehow keep this up. Like, I hope that he's able to keep taking these hits and keep making these plays, but that's hard for any quarterback when his body's just getting abused like this. And I'll take the win. You better believe it. 4-1, thumbs up. Not a problem. But if Foles is as good a quarterback as I think he is, because let me be clear. It's not like I think Foles is amazing. It's that I personally, and I'll play some plays in the background while I talk about this, I have a theory, right, that there's this class of quarterbacks that are system fits in specific offenses that are basically think right about league average. So in a world where we're going on a scale of 1 being the best and 32 being the worst, they are 17th, 16th, 18th, 19th, somewhere between that like 18th to 24th region. So pretty good in the grand scheme of things, like a starting level quarterback, but a low level starting quarterback and definitely not a top half guy. And think about it, guys. Nobody wants them. Nobody needs those guys. They want top half quarterbacks. They want Carson Wentz. I picked that name intentionally. They want Josh Allen. They want Mitch Trubisky. They want Patrick Mahomes. They want Russell Wilson. They want EJ Manuel. They want these young guys that have the opportunity to prove themselves and potentially be a top 10 quarterback. So that means guys like Nick Foles, who again, 18th to 24th. And if you're looking for other names, Ryan Fitzpatrick fits this category. Case Keenum fits this category. Those are the main three that I have. Case Keenum is the play action system fit. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the just chuck the ball Bruce Arians system fit. And Foles is the West Coast guy. So he's the West Coast offense system fit. And if you take a look at his work in West Coast offenses, he has been really, really good whenever he's paired with one of them. And on the Chiefs, he was okay. Very limited experience there. In Philadelphia, he was the best version of himself. On Jacksonville, not very good. Neither was he good on St. Louis. I'm not crazy, guys. But the point is that in this Bears system, I do think he has the opportunity to be better than you expect. And like you're saying, Biscuit, you're saying that Fitzpatrick is good for right now. But you know what? When he was in Houston, he wasn't that good. And you can look at all these different quarterbacks. Again, Case Keenum, magical run on the Vikings. Nick Foles, magical run on Philadelphia. Fitzpatrick, maybe you could consider the Miami run magical. Totally your call. But the point is that these quarterbacks are capable, but they are not good enough to ultimately get you to where you want to go, a Super Bowl, which is okay. The interception, did it just roll through? Yeah, Quinn, there's a lot that's catchable or correctable. Next time, Allen Robinson ought to just catch the ball. I'm not even trying to be that hard. It's a jump ball, contested catch, and you want to see your guy, Allen Robinson, come down with the ball or knock the ball down. That's okay. It's happened 3 times now. You got to hope that Robinson's gotten these tipped interception things on or out of his system. But it's a good read by Foles. But so the point is, like you're saying, Mike, you've got another good one. If these guys aren't quite franchise quarterbacks, because they're not, then Kirk Cousins is just the opposite. He's just good enough to be a franchise quarterback, maybe not even, because he's actually kind of like a slightly better Case Keenum, really good in play action sets. You get the idea. But to not belabor the point, what I'm trying to tell you is that I actually believe Nick Foles is a pretty good quarterback, and he's not a franchise quarterback. I'm not trying to pretend that. I hope I've made that clear. But what he is is a lot better than a guy who's learning the position or not playing it well or is inefficient. You get the idea. You can call Trubisky whatever you want to. You can call, and like you're talking about, Biscuit, A-Rob's, I think a lot of this stuff is chemistry. Foles joined the team at this point like a week and a half ago. This play is hilarious, by the way, as Brady just fumbles a snap and Roquan gets a clear path to it. This is one of the weirder plays that I've ever seen. Like, check this out as the floodgates open on Brady on his knees and Roquan just rolls through. But yeah, anyways, the point is that Foles is able to make checks at the line, and the way that I would describe it, flesh out Matt Nagy's offense to look like whatever Matt Nagy wants it to be. So like we saw in tonight's game, let me go through this and make sure we're all on the same page. The Bears ran the ball just enough to make sure that they could still use play action. That was their whole goal. They came in, and when they would run the ball, they would just give it a shot out of a heavy set so that they could set up play action later. It didn't even need to work. All they were really trying to do on these runs was to slam it down the gut once, not take a negative play, and keep them and keep the ability alive to throw the ball down the field on play action. And like you're talking about, Joe, Foles is kind of in the best case scenario for him. Outside of a perfect offensive line, he's surrounded by all the kinds of coaches that he would work well with. And somebody said earlier that you hope Foles and Nagy that they temper each other. And hey, for those of you complaining about the Cowboys pennant, my mom is a huge Cowboys fan, and she always told me that I had to have both in the room. I love my mother. That's the whole point. But so anyways, enough with that. The whole goal here, or most play callers and quarterbacks have a relationship. That's the whole goal of play calling. You're not supposed to send your guy up to the snap with just one play. He's the end-all be-all. He has to read the defense. He has to make the play. So what Nagy's doing, where Foles and you see him yelling at him, that's okay. This is how that relationship works. This isn't, Nick Foles finally gave Matt Nagy what for. Thank heavens, Nick. This is how that relationship's supposed to work. Russell Wilson checks Pete Carroll all the time. Pat Mahomes had the idea to run Wasp in the Super Bowl, and that ended up being one of the big plays that pushed the Bears in the right direction. And speaking of talking about the Cowboys and Bears, guys, don't worry about it. The Bears have beaten the Cowboys the last 4 times they've played. Josh McCown had that amazing game against them. Even Jay Cutler was able to run rampant on them. I mean, the Bears and the Cowboys, the Cowboys give the Bears some of their best games that they've had in a long time, so I'm okay. But anyways, yeah, no worries. I've talked about this. That Foles 3-yard incompletion was nasty. I mean, that's certainly Foles' fault. But then you take a look at the body of work, and hey, at least he was able to squeeze out enough plays to put together this 20-point win. And you gotta hope for better. If you're asking me, guys, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, this was like a C+ night from Nick Foles. He still did his job. He still ultimately made enough plays to win, but I'm not about to pretend that that Nick Foles played some incredible game. And at the end of the day, he did enough to win, but you gotta hope for better against Carolina. Somebody mentioned Le'Veon Bell. I think this is as good a time as I'm going to get to talk about it. I think Le'Veon Bell, so you say that, boss, that's true, but then we see things like that lob pass to Montgomery. Yes, he did make enough plays, just like the Cordero Patterson one. This is beautifully, beautifully executed as the Bears drove down to get that touchdown, and they used this Patterson play to get into range. You're crazy, Davon. He did way better than a D+. I mean, He was able to make checks at the line of scrimmage, and teardrop throws like this were things that I know for a fact that Mitch struggled with for a long time. This throw is gorgeous, and it shows understanding of the defense. And if you take a look at exactly what happened here, I think Foles completes so here's the line of scrimmage, roughly. Foles completes about a 9-yard pass, but it's so beautifully thrown that Cordero, one of the better athletes on the Bears, is able to make it a 25-yard gain. So make sure that, you're not judging off of the Bears quarterback scale, because that's really easy. It's easy to look at the Bears quarterbacking scale and say this was a B night. I think it's a C plus if you take a look around the NFL, and that's okay because I think Foles can ultimately deliver B plus performances at other games throughout the year, and that's good. I'm giving him a C plus because, like when I criticized Nagy last week, I trust him to come out here and make better plays in the future. And you asked about the yak. It's tough to tell, Chris, primarily because I personally thought that with the Bears playing these top two defenses over the last 2 weeks, it's been hard for them to gain yak at all. And so it's not a surprise to me that they weren't able to gain a ton, but they were able to make enough plays. And that's what you need them to do. Make enough in these tough games to grind out the win. Yeah, you mentioned it, David. I think that this is the best possible opportunity for the Bears running game to show some life. Does that mean I believe they're going to? Heck, man, I don't know. But I do think that they're going to do their best, of course, and this is their best opportunity to do it, because I'm pretty sure they even, what is the word? I think the Panthers are even missing a couple of starters on that defensive line, and that's great. I mean, this is, I haven't heard any Le'Veon Bell news, by the way, David. Wish I could tell you. But so, again, this is a great understanding of play calling, as the Bears are just going to have their best receiver take on this guy one-on-one in space in the middle of cover one. One thing that was hidden that I'd have to go find some examples, but the Bears were able to play the blitz really well. I think the Bucs are going to send all 5 of their rushers here, which is technically a blitz. We'll see, won't we? Yeah, so they send all 5. Foles coolly handles the pressure, gets the ball out, which is exactly what you want to see, because Foles was able to play pretty well against the blitz all night, and the defense came through when they needed to with those big sacks that we talked about. And like you guys mentioned, short is out, which is great. Chad, I can't tell you that left guard isn't the problem, that's for sure, but the offensive line, they're going to do what they're going to do, and the Bears are going to have to hope that their offense, this is bizarre to say, and what I'm about to say is a scary thing for you, just like it's a scary thing for me. And I said this a little while back, if you do like this stream, I would love it if you liked the stream, because the more likes it gets, the more it gets promoted, everybody wins, right? But so the Bears defense came up with some huge plays when they needed to. Also, speaking of, I've started to become really, really fond of watching these kinds of defensive pass interferences, which is going to sound pretty strange, but a play like this is kind of awesome, right? So this play with Buster Screen, he's going to get PI on what I think is a fairly light call because he's able to stay with Gronkowski. So he fights with them at the line of scrimmage, comes back and gets into position, and he gets PI for basically diving over his back. But it's a huge bummer to me because I think he was, in the middle of the play. And right here with Buster Screen, once again, he's going to then step in and make a nice play against the run. Boom. Off the charge, where I'm a personal favorite. Buster Screen has become a guy that I really like because as a nickel corner, he's feisty. He puts his nose down in the run game. He's a pretty good corner, especially given that he's able to stay as healthy as he has. It's great. I mean, look, I'm not about to pretend that he's like some superstar like Bryce Callahan, but Bryce Callahan was on the field maybe 10 games a season, and so far Buster Screen, I'm not going to finish that sentence just in case that would jinx him, but I think you know where I was going. And so, yeah, it is. Buster Screen is hilarious as far as a name goes. And he's a pretty spicy cover corner himself. But so, again, at this point, question time, because I could go off on a whole lot of things. So, David, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to actually look this up just so we're all aware. One of my favorite stats, and it's not perfect, if you guys are going to learn that I'm not a great multitasker, I do what I can. So Callahan was better, but he was on the field less. So the defense of the Carolina Panthers is sitting down here at 14th in passing. So they're not bad, but they're not the best in football. What they really are is one of the worst rushing defenses. So generally speaking, people in the league don't rush, or they don't pass at them. One thing that somebody talked about, so I'm gonna have to go find a play. We're gonna have to see if we can come up with one and get lucky. But the Panthers play a specific coverage that is very, very unusual. And I want to go over it real fast because it's a college type coverage that I don't personally understand a ton. But basically, the Carolina Panthers will play 3 to 5 safeties, depending on how you count the corners. And it makes it not a great defense to pass on, but a very, very good defense to run on. And looks like we'll have to go back to week 1 as I talk about this to see if we can find an example, because I know for a fact there were a lot more of those there. A lot of this comes from the collegiate concepts that they like to use. And I wish O linemen grew on trees, for those of you talking about signing a potential new offensive line. But, I mean, hey, it's tough. Like to just find offensive linemen. They don't grow on trees, unfortunately. And while you wish they did, it's going to be tough sledding for the Bears to try to figure it out. Yeah, so let me see. It's the Big 12 dime defense. It really is. It's this thing. This is as close as I can get to it. So imagine that this linebacker right here was dropped back into this zone, and these guys kicked over more to the sides. I'll keep scanning for plays like live. I don't have one just like off the. I don't have one like so. Yeah, thank you, Zach. But so. So imagine that, where they're going to drop another safety back here. They keep a linebacker. It looks kind of like Tampa 2, but somebody mentioned it. It's the Big 12 defense. This is exactly what Matt Rule ran back at Baylor, and you better believe that they want to run it here because in theory it helps you against spread offenses. So when the other team spreads it out, you're able to counter that passing action with a ton of guys back deep. So Davon, I'd love to steal the Raiders linemen. The Raiders have a pretty doggone good defensive or offensive line, and it's fun to watch. But so let's see. They're not in it yet. But yeah, so they like to play a lot of this cover action, and they're still kind of figuring out their coverages. So the question becomes, because I don't know the answer to this, bad as they suggest, or are they still figuring it out? And that's something that I think they're rising up the rankings, because let's remember, they were like the 31st best pass defense at one point. They were really bad. So the fact that they've risen up to 42 or to 14 is a really good sign for them, and it shows that they're a secondary that's probably on the rise. I don't know if the Panthers are legit. Somebody just asked that. Like, are the Panthers legit? And I don't know the answer off the top of my head because it's been 5 games. And in 2 of those games, they were really bad. And in 2 of those games, they were pretty good. And one of those games, they were really good. But guys, we saw them play we saw them play the Falcons. We played the Falcons. That's a really bad Falcons team. And sometimes you're going to see this. This is a perfect example of what happened on week 1 and got them so famous for being so bad in coverage. You're about to see what looks to me anyways like a major blown assignment between Trey Boston and this guy, because Boston's going to act like he's got to be in coverage and that he's got a bracket, and this guy acts like he is covering him. All you got to do is see it once to realize it's a total miscommunication. Ruggs ends up wide open and then runs it up the field for a 45-yard gain. So the point is, are the Panthers getting it together at the right time? The answer is kind of yes, but also they're not that good. They're pretty good. They've got one of the more efficient offenses in the NFL for good reason. But yeah, it's trouble when evaluating the Panthers, because any argument that I'd use against the Panthers, people would try to use against the Bears, and it would go back and forth, and it's trouble. But if you ask me, I think that this is going to be a real tough battle for the Bears. It's going to be a hard game, but I do think they can win it. The bright side about what the Bears have to offer in this game against the Panthers is that they've got a good defense that's able to keep up with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. So their offense likes to do a bunch of yak stuff, a bunch of mesh concepts. Let me get to any formation. So what they like to do a whole lot of is, and I'm just going to use the Bears right here. So I will, remember, I'm drawing up a Panthers play that they like to use a whole lot, and at the end of the day, they're not going to run it out of this formation. But they like to spread it out so they get multiple receivers out on the field, and one that's called mesh a lot. So they're going to try to basically have this side of the field curl over, that side of the field curl over, and level it such that somebody gets open with the ability to catch the ball, low and turn upfield for a big gain. They are a yak attack team. They really like to do that. And so the Bears are going to have their hands full with how they want to play it. And my guess would be that they're going to try to counter it with not too high, but it won't surprise me if they pack a couple more safeties in. Imagine like cover 3 so that they can keep the ball short and then try to come up and make the tackle. This is where it becomes helpful that Kyle Fuller's as good a tackler as he is, even though, guys, I got to be honest, Eddie Jackson isn't exactly a fabulous tackler, but we kind of already knew that, didn't we? So one other play that we didn't talk about, because I don't really understand how it happened. I just know that it did. Roquan Smith got spun on a couple times by Ronald Jones, and none of them were great moments for him. Let me see if I can find one of these guys in my notes. So let's see. Yeah, okay, there's an example. So 11:57 right here. Ronald Jones is going to get an 11-yard gain off of not a good play. So let's get to the good view. Right here, Roquan times the blitz perfectly. That part's good. This could be a 3-yard loss immediately, but Ronald Jones spins away from him. He does it again later in the game. It's not good. And then Gibson doesn't get the tackle. But hey, if you were wanting to look for a bright side, it's that this game could have gone even further differently had Roquan made either of these two tackles, because the opportunity is there, which is great. So anyways, back to, somebody asked about Le'Veon Bell. I think Bell's good. Certainly, I could go dig up his film, but I'd have to find it, which isn't going to happen. Montgomery's a good back, but if the Bears are able to sign Bell for vet minimum, because he's already being paid by the Jets, I don't imagine he's going to be looking for a ton of money. I imagine he's just going to look for where will make him look the best, and he might be able to win a championship. So those are good. And the issue for the Bears here is that while Montgomery is a good back, they need a running back number 2. You can't make Patterson your running back 2. That's not a thing, because Patterson's not assignment sound in the passing game, and he doesn't have great vision as a runner. He's great on plays where you can get him out and let him run in the open field or make a play with the ball in his hands. Either of those are fine. He's not a bad player. He's just not a running back. Bell is a running back. So if you could get him in as your RB2 or your RB1B or 1A or whatever you want to see, or whatever you want to tell him he is, that's good, because the Bears need an extra back in the backfield. And I got to be honest with you guys, Ryan Nall is not my favorite player, and that's all right, because I don't expect everybody on the Bears to be super great. Here, by the way, is a play that I wanted to talk about. I might as well talk about it now. I think this thing is awesome. This is a great, like, specific, words. This is a good play by Foles, and it's one that I think is awesome because the offensive line does its job. If we take a look here, we're going to see that the Bucs are in what looks like another cover 4 set, okay? And they've got 5 linemen, like we've talked about, sitting right here with 2 linebackers. All right, so what the Bears are going to do, and you go ahead and watch this play, they're going to kick Montgomery out on a motion action to try to move the defense, send, I think it's Javon Wims, way down the field to occupy these 2 zone guys, and believe it or not, they're actually going to try to sneak Ryan Nall into this space right here. So let's watch the play and see what happens, right? So Montgomery goes into motion. Nobody moves. That means it's probably zone. So then Foles gets set. Here, it looks like this guy's being occupied. This guy's being occupied. And Ryan Nall is about to, bang, run into space. But here's the issue, guys. This corner can make a break on basically any of this. He's an NFL corner, and if you try to throw this, you will get burned. The real guy who makes the play is Levante David, who sinks back just far enough to cut this play off. Had he been down here, Foles has already thrown the ball, but he doesn't. What Foles does know is if you count the guys in coverage, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 8 in coverage. What does that mean, guys? That means that there's only 3 men rushing him. So Foles knows he has time to keep the play alive, even though he's not an outstanding athlete. So he rolls out to his right because he feels Jermaine Ifedi push his guy around behind him, and he starts scanning the field. And I'll go ahead and slow it down. Nall's not open. He's not open, but Jimmy Graham is. So Foles sees him, gets to a place where he feels he can comfortably throw, makes a nice throw over the sidelines, and boom. The Bears have 13 yards. It's a really nice play by the quarterback who reads the field, keeps the play alive, gets his eyes down the field, finds his target, and snipes him for a gain. And even there, it's not an incredible throw. Like, I'll call a spade here. He could have easily hit him in the hands, and instead he left the ball a little too far to his right, which we've seen before with Nick Foles. But Graham was wide open enough to make the play along the sidelines, and the Bears are able to pick up that first down from here. So somebody asked about Harris, and this has actually happened before that I want to quickly go over. So Harris is technically open, but he's also a cross-body throw. These are really, really dangerous for a lot of NFL quarterbacks, especially when you've got a guy as open as Jimmy Graham. While you could, in theory, loft the ball somewhere like there-ish, you're basically having to bet that this linebacker, whose name escapes me, it's not Levante David, doesn't see it, step back, and pick you off and make you look like an idiot. So instead, Nick Foles finds the wide-open Graham and puts the ball into his hands right along the sidelines for basically free yardage. It's a really good play, and it's one that I think that you can get excited about. It's not somebody mentioned it's a Mahomes throw. I don't think it's a Mahomes throw. If it is, it's because Mahomes makes a lot of pretty regular quarterback throws because he's a really good quarterback. But yeah, anyways, so Robert Quinn's not having a fabulous start to the season. I have no idea, but I'm hoping that rectifies itself. Certainly, he's had a couple of weeks to play himself back into shape. I don't want to watch this interception anymore. You guys have seen that one enough. But so, back to Le'Veon Bell. The big key here is that, that's what you mean. Yeah, Mahomes does a whole lot of stuff. Like, Mahomes and Brett Favre are known for breaking the common rules of quarterbacking. And I'll tell you what, Nick Foles isn't good enough to break those rules. You don't throw crossbody over the middle, for instance. You don't throw against the direction that you're running. It's never good. It's hard enough to throw on the run in general. So Foles is going to be that very textbook quarterback because it's all he can do. And let me see. Hey, maybe he did, Oren, but he was able to make it up he was able to make that play up throughout the rest of the drive. I don't know. The trouble is knowing the way that a lot of these quarterbacks are trying to operate their brains, like go through their reads. It's tough. But so, anyways, when we talking about Le'Veon Bell, to me the key here is that with Cohen going out, the Bears need a second running back. I have no idea, and so I don't think it's a money issue with Le'Veon Bell. I think it's a team issue. This is a nice RPO, by the way. Somebody was asking about RPOs earlier. This is a nice one. So he's going to key off of, I think, this linebacker right here. Foles loves these. This linebacker motions in. That opens up the throwing lane. Foles plunks the throwing lane right there. Boom. Nice play. And it's an RPO. So it's a nice little run, or it's a nice little playing action. They were able to make a lot of plays, as a matter of fact, off of the RPO, and it was really good to see because Foles likes to do that. But yeah, wait. Yeah, I don't think that the Bears need to pick up Bell unless it's for the league minimum. Somebody mentioned that. I don't know why Bell wouldn't play on the league minimum so that he can get his so he can basically try to reset his career. He's 28 years old. So he's at the tail end of a running back career, but he could get another contract in theory, and that's a good thing. So let's see. What other questions do y'all have? We're hitting around the 2-hour point, and in case I don't actually know, have y'all been seeing buffering points? Because I'm realizing now, 2 hours into it, that I'm running off of Wi-Fi when usually I hardwired my computer's Ethernet in, so hopefully the buffering hasn't been too bad. But what other questions can I answer? Because yeah, I thought Quinn helped Mac for sure. Another thing that, believe it or not, helped Khalil Mack, as a matter of fact, was just hubris. Is that wild to hear? Because it's 100% true. The Buccaneers were convinced that Tristan Wirfs could block Khalil Mack by himself. They were pretty sure he could because he just shut down Joey Bosa, and I just don't think that Wirfs was ready to handle Mack the entire game. And credit to Mack, he was able to turn his pass rushing wins into massive sacks. These things were huge. There was just no way for Tampa Bay to deal with what Khalil Mack was able to do. But I'd be crazy if I didn't at least mention the fact that Khalil Mack was left as open as he was, in part because the Buccaneers just thought his man was able to block him, which was awesome. I won't be surprised. Somebody asked about Trubisky if somebody takes a shot at him, but that's partially because he's the number 2 quarterback, and somebody's going to pay a little bit of money to give that guy a shot. Right here, for instance, this one made me mad because I didn't believe that this was a. I didn't think there was any way this was a penalty. This is the kind of stuff that when I talk about penalties, I'll just opine about how upset I am that defenders are constantly getting flagged for stuff. Sure, in theory, Mac hits him a little bit late, like pushes him into the ground, but at some point you gotta let the guy hit the quarterback and finish his play. You get the idea. But so. Anyways, somebody talked about PFF and grading this as his his lowest game. Here's what you guys got to understand. Pro Football Focus, to their credit and to their detriment, both tries to A, be different, which is okay, and B, they try to grade every single play as if it's its own thing. So, oh my gosh, thank you. Oh, that title. Yes, I did get this one right, and I got the thumbnail. This was, I was ready for this one. I finally pushed this one up. But so, yeah, anyways. So, what you got to remember about Mac, because here he is that he did get blocked on plenty of plays. Like, there were plenty of plays where Tristan Wirfs got him back, and that's all right, because he was able to come through with those huge sacks. What I think got kind of missed here is that the other games that Pro Football Focus scored him higher in, he was doing outstanding work. Like, he was playing super duper well. And right here, we're going to see he gets double blocked on the end, and he just didn't have the stats to show for it. He should have another sack and forced fumble on the year, but it got taken from him by Mario Edwards. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff, there really is a whole bunch of things and what's being spammed, because I haven't seen it, but anyways, neither here nor there. The point is that Khalil Mack has played some really, really good football games, and this one, even Pro Football Focus still had as good. They just didn't have it as his best effort, and it was his best statistical effort, no doubt, but on a play like that, for instance, right there, I'll back it up again, I'm not trying to hammer Khalil Mack. I think Khalil Mack's awesome, but there's no doubt that on this play, he did not win his rush, and there were plenty of those. Oh, okay. I gotcha. But anyways, so I think everything gets like too much credit. PFF, like, they get a whole lot of heat for trying to do different things. But at the end of the day, when I look at what they do, you got to take them with a grain of salt, of course. But I think that they're more complimenting the rest of Khalil Mack's games, because that's okay. And from there, they're just saying that he's played even better in other games, and I don't disagree. He's been awesome. But so Khalil Mack's a lot of fun to watch. This defense is opportunistic. Somebody asked about the salary cap. So honestly, I think that it's the Bears just want to develop who they have. They don't necessarily want to push too much money into the now, not only for future resources, but because if they can continue to grow people like Bilal Nichols and figure out a defense that works with him, then ultimately they're better off going forward. The Bears are also a weird organization, kinda, in that they really seem to like their own players. Everybody does this occasionally, and Sports Info Solutions is awesome. I don't personally look at them. I ought to. I end up spending a whole lot of time on NFL Next Gen stats. But so what the Bears tend to do, it's a lot like what the Vikings did, what the Packers have done for years, is that they will focus on their own players, maybe sometimes to the detriment of free agents that aren't there for a long time, and they're not looking for a whole bunch of deals. And to be clear, guys, I don't think it's the Bears' call whether Bell signs with us or not. As ridiculous as that sounds, I definitely think that anybody signing Bell is going to be signing him for the vet minimum. He's still making $6 million this year off the Jets. Money isn't the issue. I think the issue is going to be contendership and role in the offense. And while I would love it if the Bears signed Le'Veon Bell, even just as a backup running back, I don't even think he has to be that good to be worth a minimum signing. that's just a minimum signing, and they're perfectly okay. But that's a good question. I'll get there. But so as far as Bell goes, though, I ultimately think he's more than likely going to pick the Chiefs or the Patriots or another team that ultimately is a little better fit for, that he thinks might go further than. And at the moment, I mean this probably, I don't think you're going to find somebody higher on the Bears than myself. And I mean that because I really like the Bears offense. I really like what they're doing. I love the fact that Matt Nagy didn't try to call runs against this Tampa Bay defense, because this defense is super duper good. Like, you don't need to run the ball on this defense. They are too strong at it, and you're basically wasting downs. So then they instead threw the ball. They generated what could have been up to 35 or 37 points or something like that, and they were able to ultimately win the game. Because of that, I think this offense has room to grow. I think that this would become a 25, 27 point a game offense. And I only say that because that's like a slight tick above average. And average scoring right now in the NFL is insane. People are scoring 25 points a game. Last year in 2019, they were scoring like 21 and a half. So the Bears, who are scoring 21 and a half points, are closer to 21. I think it's 21 dead on here through 5. They ultimately are doing what would have been considered a average-ish offense last year, and it's not that great. It's not that great in the modern NFL because they need to do a little better. They need to execute better. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that it's not that great, because that's not true. That's what happens when you're 2 hours into a stream. The offense is set up for success, and if they can just execute on what's in front of them, I think that they're going to be productive. And I'm very, very curious to see what happens against the Panthers, because the Panthers' run defense is so porous, and their pass defense, it leaves enough room for Foles to work, that I think the Bears' offense could move the ball and try to push for 25, 28 points. Maybe 30. 30 would be awesome, though I'm not trying to be insane. But yeah, I agree with you guys. The holding calls are definitely helping offenses, and I think that could help the Bears. I'm just going to say it. Like, if they're not going to call holding, hold. Like, I'm okay with that. They're holding Mack, and they're holding Hicks, they're holding Quinn, they're holding a lot of guys on our defense. Just go that direction. Hold them, and let Nick Foles make some throws. That is okay. And, it's funny. You guys talk about placement. So I've watched a lot of quarterbacking over the last little while. It's really easy to criticize quarterback placement. It is. And Nick Foles is not the world's greatest ball placer. He's not. But he gets the ball into the right direction enough that ultimately he allows his receivers to determine the results of plays, and I am A-okay with that. Like, I'm perfectly fine with Nick Foles getting the ball exactly where he does. Here's another RPO, by the way. 2nd and 2. He is going to take the snap. I think he's going to read Levante David again, I think. And when he sits still, no, this is just a play-action pass. You can tell the difference because he doesn't make a read and he doesn't offer Montgomery the real ball. He just lets it loose over to Allen Robinson and quickly gets him in there. So that's a nice little just snipe by Foles that he's pushing straight into the open receiver in space, which is awesome. And again, by the way, incredible 1,400 of you guys, thank you so much. This is beyond what I ever could have imagined. But so going back to what Foles and the offense does well and what they could do against the Panthers, I think that they might be able to move the ball and at least establish a concept, because here now, against the Panthers, they have to go away, which is never easy in the NFL. But what they do get to do is they basically get to double their practice time here within the last 10 days, because they had played 2 games in the first 11 days, and then they had played then they play this third game 10 days later. So 21 days, 3 full weeks of practice. I'm not about to pretend that every iron and every kink in the NFL should be worked out after 3 weeks of practice. It may take till after the bye, but it should at least get better, which is great. And you say doubled my high score? You're crazy, Chris. This is like 5 times, 8 times my high score. This is insane. You guys are amazing. And if you like the stream, please leave a like. If you don't, feedback. But anyways, back to what we're talking about. This is a real big week for the offense because the offense has to prove itself against a defense that has left a lot of room. I'll get to you, Nanisha. Sorry. Didn't mean. I hope I didn't butcher the name. I just was, for some reason, expecting Nathaniel. That was my college roommate, and saw that that's not your name at all. So, Nanisha, I'll get to Alex Bars. But so the defense should be able to do pretty well against the Panthers, but I doubt they're going to shut them down. That's my personal guess. It's just a guess, but if I had to take a shot in the dark, I think that the Bears defense is only going to be able to hold the Panthers to about 21-24 points. They are secretly one of the more efficient offenses in the NFL, and if you take a look over the last couple weeks, they've been consistent, which is pretty cool. For them, it's not great for us. So I think the Bears will have their hands full trying to stop Teddy Bridgewater, who's an efficient short throwing quarterback, and he gets the ball out to these playmakers like Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, who are really good, and they have an offense that is running the ball outstandingly well with Mike Davis, which is that not hilarious? But so what we end up with is an offense that is probably going to do all right against our defense. And while I would, by the way, this was another one of my favorite plays. This is a simple one, but the Bears basically realize that they've got true cover one once again. And even though Allen Robinson had missed that earlier jump ball, they still go to their weapon. They see him wide open. Foles gives him a nice ball that I'm just going to call it like it is. His technique here, not very good. You can tell the offensive line's just kind of getting into his head because he kicks his foot way too far out and just lobs the ball up there, which, you know what? It's a smart play. Here's the thing. This is the complicated part. It's a smart play because he's throwing to his number one wide receiver, and he leaves the ball short enough for this Buccaneers guy to... this is one of the more clear interferences I've ever seen as a double-handed finish pushes Allen Robinson over, and ultimately, that's a textbook pass interference call. But exactly like you're saying, Ian, it's crappy footwork, but it's a good enough throw that draws a PI, and it's the same thing as a deep completion that doesn't go into Foles' 243 yards on the day. It gets wiped off, but that's 2 weeks in a row the Bears have picked up a solid 30, 40-yard gainer off of pass interference, and I, for one, am perfectly okay with that. But so, yeah. The trouble is that with the Panthers offense, they've got yak attackers like Robbie Anderson, like y'all mentioned, and DJ Moore, and they've also got the X factor in a running quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater, who, don't get me wrong, he's like not Kyler Murray, but he's still pretty good. And Jarrell, that is not fair. 3 weeks ago, I'd say that this is bad footwork that worked out, and that's exactly what I said. It's not good footwork. I pointed it out. I am doing everything I can to be as fair as possible to both of these guys, and it's the right idea, and the play ultimately helps the Bears for a reason. But so anyways, back to talking about the Panthers. Their offense is pretty well set up, and massive kudos to Matt Rule and the rest of this Panthers staff. They are calling an offense that is to a T what Teddy Bridgewater does as he reads the field, distributes the ball underneath. It's kind of similar to the Saints offense in that it takes the pressure off the quarterback and just asks Teddy to be a distributor, which he does a good job of. By the way, this is one of my favorite kinds of things Montgomery will do. I'll back this up one more time. His contact balance is really incredible, and in my opinion, that means that one of the best things Montgomery is able to do is just keep plays alive with, look, he's not the fastest running back in the world, but he gets hit there, he stays up, and he gets another yard and a half. They add up a little bit, and especially given that he's an underneath guy who should catch balls with the ability to generate a head of steam, part of me thinks that this is a pretty good scenario for him, not as a runner, but as a pass catcher in particular. But so, anyways, back to the Panthers, I think that they're going to be able to push the ball on this defense. I don't think they'll be incredible because the Bears have basically too many pieces. Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller, Jalen Johnson, Roquan Smith. Danny Trevathan's not built for this kind of game, but those four are. Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn, if he shows up, is awesome. Those would be great. Akeem Hicks, this would be a huge game for him to have a good one. And we'll have to see. at the end of the day, you do play the game for a reason, and there's obviously a whole lot of ways this thing could go, but I won't be shocked if this Bears defense will stand up to the test and keep the Panthers in check. But in check might not look like what we want it to. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they'll keep them to 13 points. It doesn't mean that they're going to get 3 picks, a fumble, and a touchdown. It probably means that they'll give up 21 to 24 points. But this is where the Bears offense has a huge opportunity to play. They have a huge opportunity to establish themselves because this Carolina defense is dramatically better than this Panthers defense is a much better opportunity for the Bears to prove or offense to prove themselves against than the Tampa or Colts defense. It's not quite the Falcons defense where Foles was able to throw quote unquote 5 touchdowns and a half, which is fun to say, but it is kind of true. He was chucking the ball all over the place, but it's a better opportunity and one where I hope the Bears offense can show us something positive. Wouldn't we all like to see that? That'd be great, right? And so then when I look at this, I think to myself, even if the Bears come out flat, because it's possible, they have to basically just win one of their next 3 games. So they need to beat the Panthers, they need to beat the Rams, or they need to beat the Saints. If they do any of that, they're 6-3 after this first 3 games, and they go into the rest of their season, which is a whole lot up and down with games in their pockets, so that when they hit that back part of the season against like the Texans and the Jaguars, the Vikings and the Lions and so on and so forth, that they can ultimately do enough with what they've got remaining to try to crank out 10 total wins. All they got to do, in my opinion, is make those plays. And honestly, Oren, I don't know. I really don't. I don't think Vegas sees the Bears offense the same way I do. I think they see them as the 24th best offense in the league. And I think that if they get their execution together, it's a big if. I'm not about to pretend that it's going to happen, but Nagy certainly seemed angry enough. I think that the Bears could ultimately come out here and surprise some people. Maybe they won't be, again, like the best offense ever, but they could be pretty good and one of the better offenses we've seen in Chicago. To Sean Gibson, good question. I think he's a reliable safety that's basically invisible on most plays, and that's all you could ask of him. He's not an incredible cover guy, but he does enough. I haven't seen him really get thrown at, ever. And so far, if all he's really done is not make some tackles on running backs in space, I talked to a defensive back friend of mine. They basically talked about how there's nothing that they hate more than tackling running backs in space. Running backs are outstanding. And exactly like you're talking about, Oren, I don't mean to be like a homer here, but I do think that the Bears have the offensive scheme and the offensive talent to be a middle-of-the-road offense. And right now, they're underneath that. And so I have no idea, Jarrell, why. So, Ferris, I'm going to make sure that we've got Ethernet next time because I totally understand about the lag, and you're absolutely right. In fact, why don't I just do that now? Give me a second. Gotta give the people what they want, right? So, you asked about replacing Daniels. I wish that there was some super solution to in-season lineman replacements, but there's really not. So the Bears are going to have to figure out whatever they the Bears are going to have to figure out some kind of solution, but it's probably going to be Alex Bars. And that's all right, because as we saw in the later part of this game, I can finally get to Naisha's question. But so Alex Bars is fine, I think, as long as he's not against elite guard play, which obviously that's kind of a big if. But when you watch a lot of these pass reps, what you'll see is that in any situation that Vea was out of the game, I think that Bars was able to hold up fine. Again, is he James Daniels? No. I think James Daniels was an above-average guard. But here, for instance, take a look at that left guard spot. He's able to run over, Oh no, that's a bad block. Oh no, I picked the wrong play. That already made things look poor. But so right here he is against, I don't think that's Vea, unless Vea got hurt later. But there he stands up just fine, which is great. And he's able to continue doing that going forward, which is awesome. I mean, I want the Bears' offensive line to be as good as it can be. And Alex Bars doesn't seem like a terrible option. Certainly, I don't know if he's a long-term starter, but offensive lines all over the NFL basically end up having to play with one backup lineman somewhere. And of all the spots to have it, honestly, guard, not that bad, especially if Kenny Clark stays injured. Not that I would wish injury on anybody, but Kenny Clark's an outstanding interior defensive lineman that would be able to tear up Alex Bars. But most of the other guys that are really, really good, like Yannick Ngakoue, as I understand it, he plays edge, and that means that he's more Charles Leno, Bobby Massey's problem, and they're a little better than Alex Bars. That's okay. Bars gets to join the club, just like Daniels, of being really bad in space, though, as he, it's not super great. But either way, this isn't a ton of tape to go off of. It's a game that he didn't prepare for. He probably played scout team for most of the game and didn't expect, James Daniels tears back. But from there, yeah, Aaron Donald may very well have a field day. That's for darn sure. But if the Bears aren't double blocking him on almost every play, I don't know what they're going to do. What will be funny to watch that Rams game is it will be Leonard Floyd. And so I don't think so. Honestly, Sam, I think that offensive tackles get criticized really heavily, and people don't realize how hard of a position it is. So, Josh, that's a good question, and I've talked about it for a little bit. But I'll mention it again. But so the big key here, yeah, Leonard Floyd thing's hilarious, right? So tackle is a really tough position, and honestly, I think that it gets a lot of heat. But people can often act as if their tackles need to be Joe Thomas like all the time, and I think people can kind of forget because like there's only one Joe Thomas and he'll be a Hall of Famer, and it's really, really hard to find those tackles unless you draft them high up. Look, I'm not trying to pretend that like these tackles are amazing or you should be proud of Bobby Massey or Charles Leno. What I will say is that Charles Leno and Bobby Massey are okay, and they're not super bad. They're not super good. And against those lower tier teams, the tackles like Massey and Leno looked great. And against these higher tier teams, they've definitely gotten beat a couple times. But at the end of the day, I would rather deal with an issue at inside or on the inside of the line, especially at guard and not center, than I would deal with a tackle issue or losing Whitehair, because then, gosh, what would we have to do? I guess Daniels would have to play center, which he doesn't have a great track record of, or Sam Mustipher would have to play center. This is about as good as you get. So somebody asked, or you asked why Leno blocks like he doesn't care at times. He's primarily a technical lineman. So what he's trying to do is, like, let's take this snap as an example. All he's really trying to do is stay in the way of Levante. It's not Levante David, it's Shaq Barrett. So you're going to see this, and then he spots the linebacker. It was Levante David. I knew it, guys. I knew it. But Leno tends to block like he is just trying to stay in the way. He's more than willing to get hit and knocked to the ground. You guys have probably seen it. If any of you guys are Tape Never Lies fans, I've heard a whole lot about how he will go crazy on Charles Leno, and a whole lot of the times I think he's being unfair. You got to remember, if an offensive lineman gets knocked to the ground and he doesn't touch the ball carrier, technically that offensive lineman did a good job. And if you go and you start watching other tape all around the league, you'll realize that a lot of these left tackles, no, he's not physical at all. Somebody just asked about that. Not even a little bit. He's not physical in the slightest. But what he does do is he keeps his guy off of the quarterback and off of the runner more than just about everybody, and that's okay. But so I think Leno's fine. I think he gets a lot of heat for being average and not physical, and that's okay. I get it. Chicago wants that black and blue team. They want those guys that just like wham, the hammer guys, and they're run the ball, I formation, boom, boom, boom. But Leno's a much more common zone blocker with decent feet that generally stays in front of his guy, except for when he doesn't. And for those of you that missed it, I'm not about to pretend he's incredible. And right here on this one, I think it is, oh boy, not only did he miss an assignment at the end, and yeah, that happened, but he right here, I believe, gets beat by Shaq Barrett outside, and it's rough. But so, no, right there he holds just fine. It must be the play before. But so, anyways, any other questions that I can answer before we... Oh, yeah, bad screen game. So, honestly, yeah, so somebody mentioned that or just now. We don't pay him like he's elite at all. He is, I think he is, if you take it by cash, the 20th tackle in the league, and he plays like it. He maybe even plays a little better than that, but again, I'm saying, the only argument I'm making here is that Leno's okay. It's that he's just not a piece of trash at left tackle, and here he gets shredded by a very Robert Quinn-like move outside by Shaquille Barrett. Very, very good defensive lineman who's just going to rip right through him and make the hit on Nick Foles. But Foles gets the ball away. Darnell Mooney plays nice defensive back. Good stuff. But yeah, so the point is, let's get back to other things because I could talk about Leno for a while, but honestly, I think my video covers it decently, and that's on the page. But yeah, exactly. That's exactly right, Reinhardt. I'm not sitting here trying to, oh gracious, something must have happened with the stream. But so, Reinhardt, you nailed it completely. It's less about me saying Leno's super good, and it's more me saying offensive linemen in the NFL, they're not as good as you think they are. And that's okay. Like, the real amazing tackles are amazing. And gracious alive, I hope that this stream comes back online at some point. But there are guys like Taylor Lewan, for instance, that are just okay all over the league. And I think Jack Conklin's even starting to get a lot of heat for being not good enough, and he's fine too. Riley Reif, another great example of a left tackle that has, oh my gosh, if you go over to the Vikings fan base, they are only just now starting to realize that Riley Reif is all right instead of being outright bad. Left tackles across the league get a lot of heat. Lester Wiltfong and I have talked about that. At some point, maybe I'll bring him on stream and he can tell you himself. But yeah, I mean, it's tough because your left tackle is probably only going to be good for about 85% of plays. Leno looks good on like 25% of the plays that he does well at. And the rest of them, he does like, ooh, just good enough. But yeah, exactly. Oh, problem. I need to go find a play for you because there is one that I think is kind of funny where the Bears do try to chip for Leno and it goes really badly. So I don't know if I can find it because, oh man, yeah, I don't know where it is. But oh my gosh. One thing that I do think is kind of funny is that I've seen a whole bunch of instances where the Bears will try to chip for Charles Leno, and oh man, like the guy gets inside on him pretty immediately. And to be clear, when I say that, it's not that 25 or 75% of the time he's bad. It's that 75% of the time he, and I quote, looks soft. So he looks like he's not blocking the guy hard enough or not giving enough effort or this or that or the other. And he's just kind of staying in front of him like the like a basketball player, just trying to keep his feet in front of the guy. And if he gets pushed a little bit, that's all right. As long as he doesn't give up the sack, he's doing his job. Yeah, exactly. We've already talked a whole bunch about the Panthers. So when we will roll around, or when the VOD rolls around, you can take a look at it, which is fine. But ultimately, somebody asked about the screen game. I'll take like a couple more questions. We're starting to hit like the 2.5 hour mark, and I think at some point we can close this up and call it good. But I think the screen game kind of just needs to get better because it's going to get better. When you look at a lot of the screens that the Bears tried to run, they just didn't get anybody out there to help. A great example is this one. We're going to take an offensive holding call because for Gracious Alive, so for Gracious Live, they're going to try to kick this ball out here to Allen Robinson, and they just don't really get any blocks down there. Robinson tries to get outside, but it's not quite good enough. Kmet, it's not that Kmet does like a bad job, and certainly the safety comes over there and makes a play. This may not be the best example in the world, but a whole lot of their issues with screens have come from being completely unable to hold a block. So a better example of it would be going back to, unfortunately, the Colts game. So if anybody doesn't want to look at Colts tape, then avert your eyes. But at the end of the day, their screen game really is more about execution than anything else, and it needs to just get better from the blocking end before it can get any better numerically. Because when you take a look at what Daniels and Whitehair are about to do here, neither of them are going to hold a block for Cordero Patterson, who immediately gets tackled by the guy that Daniels missed. But yeah, so when it comes to somebody's asking about the deep ball, and I don't think I understand the question. I thought the deep ball was all right. And yeah, no, I understand, Reynard. I wish I had no memory of it either. They did not play very well at all. But so I do think that helps. Foles was like one of the bottom 5 people in the offensive line, or Foles was one of the bottom 5 people in time to throw. So he's getting the ball out nice and quickly, and I do think it helps the offensive line. There's a reason that he went 30 for 42, and a lot of it was because he was able to manage the blitz and make plays against it. So in terms of like how to set up the screen game better, at the end of the day, I think that they've got to just play better. If they hit their shots and they start threatening downfield more than they were able to, some guys hold their blocks, set up those touchdown plays that we've talked about for the last 2.5 hours, I do think defenses will start backing off and they'll be able to make plays in the screen game. At the moment, I think their screens are a little bit obvious, which is what happens when you're a bad offense. You want to throw short, and the other team is able to just run up on you because they're able to recognize a screen when you try to let anybody through. But plays like this, I think, are as good as you're going to get as far as a screen goes. So this is a cover 1 drop, or that might drop into cover 3. I can't remember what they do, but the key here is that you're going to see Foles stand tall in the pocket. Montgomery's going to leak out. Somebody at one point was talking about how, like a reporter was talking about how Montgomery misses assignment. He doesn't. So this is what's called a check and release route. What Montgomery's going to do is he's going to check if anybody is blitzing on the inside, and then if there's nobody there, he's going to release out, hence check and release. So he takes a look, nobody's blitzing, and while Bobby Massey over here, that may be a tight end, we'll see in a little bit, loses his block and ends up with Foles getting just about ready to get obliterated. Foles is able to leak the ball out front while taking a hit, and Montgomery makes a really, really nice play in space. So let's take a look at the play from behind. You'll see it a little clearer, where Montgomery once again takes a look. And while the Buccaneers do blitz, so kudos to Foles for managing this blitzing situation, there's no pressure up the middle for Montgomery to help with, and there's a clear hole for him to release into. So it helps the quarterback in this case for Montgomery to get out into space and allow his guy to make a play. Massey at this point has already lost his edge on the block. Leno's actually holding his fine, and Foles leaks the ball out. Montgomery goes, takes a guy on in space, makes a nice move, and there you go. Bang. So, Sam, I get you. He definitely didn't have a great game, that's for sure. The point is, to tie this back into the screen game, at the end of the day, I do think that the Bears are going to have to find these holes before they get true screen holes. So in this case, the Bears basically run like a 4 verticals concept, which you can kind of see here. I think they may bring this guy across. Looks like it might be Kmet or Graham. But either way, they're tying all of the defenders up to where Montgomery is an easy choice, especially once the blitz comes. So Foles throws hot. That's great. Bang. Big yardage. Everybody wins, especially if you're a Bears fan. Yeah, there really was a lot to like. I think that they can set up screens if they continue to run this kind of offense and execute on it. I talked about this earlier. I'll say it one more time. Basically, if you change 4 plays from the Bears' day, the 3rd and 2 to Allen Robinson that Foles flat out missed, the touchdown throw to Mooney that Foles and Mooney couldn't connect on. I think it's a chemistry issue. I don't know if I'm being unfair, but either way, it's Foles' fault. I'll just pin it on him in the name of fairness. So 2 Foles plays, one that Bobby Massey needs to hold that block at the end of the game, like third quarter-ish, like late third, early fourth, where if he holds it, Cordero Patterson's wide open for a touchdown. And the 4th play is the A-Rob interception. Don't tip it to your defensive back. If those happen, Bears pick up 17 points. And all of a sudden, bang, they're able to the score line looks a whole lot better. Their offense was moving the ball. So if the Bears can execute on that, then I think that there's a lot to like in this offense, and they should be able, for instance, to get the screen game working if they can get downfield a little more. At this point, I think a lot of it's just about tying up chemistry issues, and if this problem still exists around the Saints game, yeah, we'll hammer them. But even seeing this kind of an offensive performance that left so much on the table and still won the game is a very, very positive thing for the Bears, which is awesome. You know what? Yeah, I think I can play that again for you, Ferris. So somebody asked about a lot more quick passes. Truth be told, I think that whether it was Daniels or Bars, the Bears are going to throw a lot of quick passes. It's one of the things Foles does really well. He reads plays quickly, and he gets the ball out on time and relatively accurately. So I do think that the jump ball problem with Allen Robinson is a fluke, but I'll tell you right now that I'm almost blushing with embarrassment that I've now said it's a fluke 3 out of 4 weeks. At some point, it's got to stop happening. So I'll be the first to tell you it's weird. But yeah, it's I'll just leave it at that. It's a weird problem, and you got to hope it stops happening and that he starts coming down with the ball. And HL, we do really need to win this game, but I mean, gosh, let me make this clear. We shouldn't have beaten the Buccaneers. We didn't play well enough. But the defense and the offense came through just enough on a bad night for the Buccaneers to steal a win, which is a really big deal because now they're 5-1. If we do win this game, if we do win this game, that's awesome. 6-1. If we don't win this game, that's okay. We just have to win one against the Rams or the Saints, and we'll still have that 6-win mark before we play 2 games against the Vikings, 1 game against Jacksonville, 1 game against Houston, and 1 game against Detroit, which, if I've done the math on that correctly, that's like 5 or 6 relatively easy games that the Bears can use to try to push for that 10-6 mark that probably gets them a playoff spot almost 100%. Oh gosh, I hope I didn't say I said 5-1 if they beat the Panthers, but if they don't beat the Panthers, they can get it back basically. In this play, again, I've covered it a little bit on Twitter. I'll cover it one more time here. Kyle Fuller reads this play beautifully, and he basically just gets bored on a really nice play right here because one more time, smash concept right here. It leaves Fuller for too long. Fuller basically gets bored, starts peeking inside. He runs down, hits the running back. Running back's never got a chance. Bada boom. But yeah, I know that we're 4 as of now, Dallas. Don't worry about it. We're 4-1. We're exactly where we could ask to be. This is frankly better than expected based on how good the Buccaneers and Colts ended up being, and that's super cool. As far as Le'Veon Bell goes, we'll see. Won't surprise me if he signs with the Chiefs, and I think the Bears have every reason to beat the Panthers, but at some point you got to think that the ball's going to bounce the wrong direction. I'm readying myself to lose, though in my head and on my spread picks, I've got the Bears. I have picked the Bears this time, and I 100%. I frankly even picked them last week in a maybe, but I may have picked. Anyways, getting back to the point, I think the Bears can win this game. It just won't surprise me if they basically get unlucky. And I think that at the end of the day, they need to be 10-6. That's the aim. And they might have a shot here at 12-4 if they can beat a team like the Saints, if they can beat a team like the Rams, if they can beat a team like the Titans. But I don't know what things are going to look like against Green Bay. I'm really hoping, by the way, that the Packers slide a little bit and that maybe they're just peaking at the wrong moment. But we'll see. They look really, really good right now, and you got to hope that slows down if you're a Bears fan. Either way, yeah, the Saints are definitely going through some stuff. They're beatable. This game, this last one, the Buccaneers game, was huge. It is the right time to win, and it's pretty great that we did. I can't wait to see what happens from here. I think the Bears have a very good shot against the Panthers. I can't wait to watch this game because one way or another, we end up with a lot to learn, and we don't have to think about the Packers for quite some time. So, anyways, guys, I think that'll about do it for the stream because we've just about talked about everything that we can. I am excited to move on to another football game because having sat with this one since Thursday, oh my gosh, I feel like I've almost got it memorized. Defense played well. Offense played well. It was a muddy game. Both sides made mistakes. One guy that, you know what? I'll throw out one more piece of credit, and that's something that I never thought I would be saying here, but I'll tell you what. If there's one guy that did something that I didn't anticipate for him to do, it's this guy right here. It's Pat O'Donnell, who, you know what? Big kudos to Pat O'Donnell for punting this ball from roughly his 20, almost 60 full yards to pin the Buccaneers back the other direction. You want to talk about a subtle play that is exactly what you talk about in the world of field position football. O'Donnell puts that ball on the 8. The Bears coverage team drags him down at the 15. They lose 2 yards on the next play. And then when the Buccaneers go to punt, they don't get it near as far, and Ginn's able to drag it up to the the 48. Like, as goofy as it sounds to be talking about a punter, the Bears force a punt on the other side, and if this guy booms it down 60 yards, it's going to be a lot further than where it goes, but he doesn't get that kind of distance. He only gets about a 48-yard punt, and the Bears are able to take a field possession advantage that's much, much bigger than it was when Megapunt let that ball off his foot. You got to give the punter credit when he deserves it, and that last punt was as close to a clutch punt as it gets. So, yeah, guys, it's been awesome. My jaw is on the ground with how excited I am of how many people tuned in. If you liked this stream, please give it a like. It has been so much fun getting to talk to you guys about the Bears. I can't wait to continue breaking down this season with y'all and going on this adventure, because I'll tell you what, either way, this is already way better than last year, where we were a 3-0 team that was just happy to be there. And this year, it really feels like we've got a lot going for us. Our defense is still feisty. This offense might just be able to get leads. I said this to kick off the stream. I'll say it one more time. Out of the first 5 drives of the Chicago Bears against the Buccaneers, the number 2 defense in DVOA in the NFL, the Bears only stopped themselves. They only stopped when they made a mistake. And if the Bears can take what Nagy was saying and apply it, execute at that high level that you know he wants them to execute at, this offense could be surprisingly dangerous. Maybe not good, but a lot better than a quote-unquote Bears offense should be, because I know for a fact, I will tell you guys that I have been... I've had people, because I'm a Dallas local, that have laughed at me about the Bears offense for years. And if Matt Nagy can deliver on his promise and bring that Andy Reid-style West Coast offense to Chicago, and even with the low level that we have of Nick Foles, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, and some guys, because I love our team, don't get me wrong, but we've got an average offensive line, a couple average receivers, an above-average receiver room overall. This isn't the talent to be just the greatest offense ever, but if good scheme can turn this dadgum thing into a pretty good offense, I think that it'll be able to carry this defense a long way, and hopefully we'll get a win in the playoffs. Is a Super Bowl in the is a Super Bowl in the cards? I don't know, because the NFL always looks incredibly different by the end of the year. You never know who's going to get hurt. You don't. And you never know who's going to be healthy at the time or how they're going to be playing. But my goal for this year is let's just win a daggone playoff game. Let's get ready. Let's go to the playoffs, and let's try to get Nagy's first win of his tenure, and hopefully it is one of many going forward. Reinhard, I'll tell you what. If somehow, what one fantasy I'll leave you Bears fans with, you wonderful, awesome NFL Bears fans, if there's one guy that I would love to see the Bears just throw the book at in terms of like money, if Dak Prescott is mad enough to leave Dallas and hits the free agency market, as ridiculous as that sounds, because I know people are already going to be like, oh, Dak's not that good. I'll tell you what Dak is. By the time Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees retire, which is coming, Dak Prescott will be a verifiable top 10 quarterback. And based on the reports that I have heard from the from medical people, they're saying that he should be healed up by Marchish. And that's okay. That's great. And they're also saying that, very similar to Eddie Jackson, it's a clean break. So he should be able to heal back pretty much as healthy as you could ask for. And sure, don't get me wrong, you got to understand, Sam, I've heard about the whole like Dak isn't all that good thing my entire life. So maybe I'm just hearing from different channels than you guys are. But the point is that if Dak hits free agency, I am willing to cut half this defense to get a quarterback into Chicago that's verifiably pretty good. Dak Prescott would be a huge upgrade over Nick Foles. And you know what? If Nick Foles wins a playoff game, he might make the NFC Championship. If he makes the NFC Championship, he can opt out, and the Bears are able to the Bears would be able to get the money to pay Dak. And we'll figure it all out. I love defense as much as the next guy. I really do. But one thing that I've been learning watching this football season, I'll throw some plays up in the background while I rant. It's that defense is getting harder and harder because officials are swallowing their whistle more and more often. It breaks my heart, but it just shows how much you need a decent offense. And Dak Prescott would certainly be a wonderful solution. Yeah, actually, that's a really good call, Alex Smith. Stafford could become available too, and that's a really surprising. Okay, that makes sense. But so the point here is that if the Bears do sign a free agent quarterback that's pretty good, like Stafford or Dak, the bright side is that means that they could use their first-round pick to draft an offensive lineman and potentially beef up the Chicago offense to make it look a little bit more like the Chiefs and a little bit less like the Bears used to. But that's just a thought, like a postulation. We have 11 more games to play, so we've got a lot of time between now and free agency to figure out everything from where the Bears are going to be picking with their first round pick, to what their cap's going to look like, to how many of his incentives Nick Foles is going to hit, to everything in between. I think Le'Veon would be a good ad. I'll end on that, but it's just a matter of where he wants to play. I don't get the impression he's lacking suitors, so at this point, sure, I would love it if the Bears picked up Le'Veon Bell, but it's totally his call, and it won't surprise me if he goes to Kansas City or New England. So at this point, I can't wait to see what happens. You mentioned Trey Lance. Another option is that Wilson kid out of BYU. I've heard about that. I hoped Carr would become available for a while. You talk about Matthew Stafford like being bad. He's pretty good. But either way, the point is that if the Bears next offseason trade 2 of their first-round picks away to get a quarterback, that's a big risk you're taking on a quarterback that if they don't work out, oh man, you are deep, deep in purgatory. Whereas as we've seen, guys, like we've talked about it, the Bears are just looking, I think, for their free agent Alex Smith from 2013's Kansas City Chiefs. They need that quarterback to hold them over until they draft the guy, and that's okay. I'm okay with that because we can win a whole bunch of football games. Matt Ryan would be really interesting. He's got a huge, huge cap hit. You talk about Alex Smith, his leg and certainly his game seems like it's in a bit of a different place than it used to be. But yeah, at this point, I think that we've covered just about everything that we can. MP, there's actually a surprising amount of Charles Leno discussion in the VOD. So at this point, I think we're about to close up shop. Guys, I am so excited about how much y'all enjoyed it. If you really did, or if you haven't liked the video yet and that's your jam, please leave it a like. That helps this thing promote itself a lot. I can't wait to see you guys next week. Keep an eye on the channel for 6 picks coming up, and I'm going to see if I can put together something that details a little more of the play calling stuff that I talked about early in the stream. And guys, until next week, it has been awesome talking to you. Bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with me.